Chapter 2002. Father Stella had been standing on the stage for quite a while, but ever since the guy who was knocked unconscious by the physics holy sword was brought off the stage, no one else went on stage. Originally, it was expected that the Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner of the Magician Association should have gone on stage to look for trouble, but he didn't. Everyone's line of sight and camera almost simultaneously shifted to the Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner. The Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner just sat there silently with his hands crossed. His face was expressionless, as if he had no intention of making a move. This was strange. Father Stella had insulted the Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner during the summit meeting. The Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner shouldn't be able to tolerate this, right? But now, this Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner, not to mention going on stage, he didn't even have the slightest bit of murderous aura. Logically speaking, after leaving the Forbidden City, the various representatives of the Transcendence would more or less reveal a trace of unusual aura. But the Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner at this moment, if one didn't pay attention, it would be easy to overlook his existence. Time passed little by little. The Scarlet Blaze Tower's owner seemed to be getting on stage, but Father Stella was still looking at Xiao Gun standing on the stage. He couldn't just drag on like this. At this moment, Kelowna Shinryu, wearing the Dragon King mask, directly stepped on the air and landed on the stage. The priest's gaze instantly froze. He raised his eyebrows and opened his mouth. "I see that your figure is quite good. You must be very durable." But before the priest finished speaking, Kelowna Shinryu, who landed on the stage, directly waved his hand and a golden dragon-shaped shockwave shot out. At this moment, Father Stella didn't seem to care about his mouth. He held the physics holy sword in his hand and directly smashed towards the golden dragon-shaped shockwave. The shockwave wasn't smashed away in an instant. Father Stella's body was directly pushed back a distance of 7 or 8 meters before the physics holy sword finally smashed the shockwave away. The people watching the live broadcast didn't know what was going on at the scene, but some of the netizens were in an uproar. It was unknown which little genius uploader it was, but he had actually added a classic, "No One Can Beat Me" in BMG BGM when it came to Kelowna Shinryu's appearance, a variation of the unspeakable sutra, outshining the others. On the field, Father Strahl, who had stopped, switched the crowbar from his right hand to his left, and then shook his right palm. The sharp-eyed people could even see that Father Strahl's right palm was already steaming and turning red at this time. "Forget it, I'm not going to fight with a guy with a blue lock, unless the officials give me an explanation." Father Stella's voice was very low, so low that only Kelowna Shinryu could hear it. Long Shual looked deeply at this talkative priest and said indifferently, "Got it, go back to where you belong. Since you've taken the 3 beads, don't disturb the proceedings of the conference. Otherwise, as the referee of this conference, I have no choice but to take action against you." Kelowna Shinryu's voice was very loud, probably to deliberately let the world hear it, especially the latter half of his words. "Referee." Kelowna Shinryu was not a contestant. She was the referee. At this moment, Father Stella shrugged, patted his butt and left directly as if he had no backbone at all, and really patted his butt. As the referee? In the crowd, a man wearing a wrinkled white suit could not help but frown at this moment. Farrell. But at this moment, Mr. Gareth, who was beside Farrell, seemed to be relieved. Fortunately, the referee is not on the field. This time, there will be one less strong opponent in this conference. While saying this, Mr. Gareth was holding the only bead in his hand. This was shot by the evil god of the fire cloud before the start of the conference. The moment the bead was shot, Mr. Gareth felt a little surprised. He thought that with the night mechanism's current condition, it would be difficult to be recognized as a first-line force by the Kelowna administration. In short, Mr. Gareth felt that as long as he could keep this bead, he could go back and report to Her Majesty. By the way, Mr. Gareth was now on infusion of glucose and saline. Not good. Who would have thought that Farrell would directly say such a thing at this time, as if he was about to make a move? Mr. Gareth was so scared that he did not care about his manners at this time, and directly reached out to hug him from behind. But how could Farrell be hugged by a man from behind? With a flash, he had already escaped from Mr. Gareth's surprise attack. Just as Mr. Garrett's expression turned bitter and he was inwardly cursing, Farrell stopped. At this time, a middle-aged man wearing a Chinese tunic suit appeared silently in front of Farrell. He had white hair on both sides of his head, and his expression was dignified. This man at this time chuckled and said, "Kelowna is a big place with abundant resources, and capable people are everywhere. Not to mention, there are many strong foreign guests gathered here, Mr. Farrell. Why are you in such a hurry? Don't scare them away." Farrell did not understand. Mr. Gareth had learned Kelowna language for a few years, but with half a bucket of knowledge, he could only understand the general idea. This was actually translated by Wolfgang later on. Yes, at this time, there were two people in front of Farrell. One was Mr. Song, and the other was Wolfgang. Mr. Gareth did not know where these two guys came from, but since they dared to stand in front of Farrell, they seemed to know each other. "All right." Farrell nodded calmly and stood to the side, not moving a muscle. Mr. Gareth was secretly relieved, but when he looked at Mr. Song, they had already disappeared. When did they leave? Suddenly, Mr. Gareth felt that the bead that Fire Cloud, Evil God shot seemed to be a hot thing. He had no one to discuss it with at this time. The number of people who came to the night institution this time was very small, and he was the only one who could take charge. As for Lancelot, who came later, she was not here at this time. Lancelot was in a lounge at this time. She said that she was inexplicably caught and trained for a night, so she was dirty. She wanted to take a bath and change her clothes. Just at this time, a voice suddenly sounded. "Although I'm a referee, I will also participate in this conference as a contestant. I remember that at the summit, someone said that he wanted to challenge me. You get down here yourself." Hearing this, Mr. Gareth's face turned pale. "Can't you finish your words at once?" Kelowna Shinryu's announcement that he would be the referee caused a small commotion. But before the commotion completely stopped, Long Shirwa spoke again. She announced that she would also participate in this competition as a contestant. This was very uncomfortable. Why is it that the strong people of Kelowna are each more outstanding than the other? But at this time, the strong people who were watching the show tacitly turned their attention to this strength conference. Oh, the initiator of the First World Extraordinary Martial Arts Competition, a strong person from ancient Persia, a legendary warrior who called himself Haoma. The man had a unique beard, a large white cloth wrapped around his head, and a scimitar embedded with gems on his waist. At this time, Kelowna Shinryu's voice had not yet faded away. The legendary warrior instantly pulled out the scimitar on his waist, shouted something, and directly turned into a flash of light, shooting toward the stage of the conference. A strong airflow bounced around the legendary warrior, and at this time, the stage was swept up by a sandstorm. Special effects, momentum. For a moment, the limelight was unparalleled. But when the sandstorm was about to invade the stage, Kelowna Shinryu once again waved his hand and slapped out a dragon-shaped shockwave. The attacking fan was not like Father Stella's holy sword, which could break the dragon-shaped shockwave, but it was scattered by itself. The figure of Haoma was directly sent flying in the air and smashed into the ground outside the stage. The legendary warrior from ancient Persia was directly buried in the ground above his chest. At this time, Haoma pressed his hands on the ground and used all his strength to pull his body out, but he was covered in dust and looked very embarrassed. "If you can blow even a grain of sand into this stage, it's my loss." Kelowna Shinryu snorted coldly at this time. You gone too far. You're the one who provoked me in public. If you have the ability, blow a grain of sand into this stage." Kelowna Shinryu was too lazy to say more at this time. Don't be incompetent and furious. She was in a bad mood today, and now her mood was getting worse. Since she stepped on this stage, the restlessness and uneasiness had increased exponentially. It was as if something bad was about to happen. At this time, Long Shirwa was not in the mood to care about this so-called extraordinary person who came out of nowhere. Ancient Persia myths? She did not mean to look down on this divine system, but at this time, Kelowna Shinryu was inexplicably irritated. Even if the immortals came, if they did not like this, they might come up and beat them up. Roar! At this time, The legendary warrior roared angrily at this time, and suddenly a powerful force rose from His body. At the same time, Hauma even took out a small bottle from his arms. He pressed his thumb and directly broke the cap of the small bottle, as if he wanted to drink it. However, before Hauma drank the liquid in the small bottle, a huge golden dragon claw appeared in front of him. The dragon claw directly grabbed his body. As the true dragon of the divine land on the stage raised and waved his hand, the legendary warrior kicked, lifted up, smashed down, lifted up, smashed down, lifted up again, and smashed down again, until he started to doubt his life. After more than 100 hits, the golden dragon claw disappeared, leaving behind the legendary warrior, Hauma, who was paralyzed like a pile of mud outside the stage that was full of potholes. At this time, Hauma, who was lying on the ground with one last breath, moved his fingers and opened his eyes reluctantly. He seemed to be looking for something around him, but when he saw a small bottle that had fallen beside him, the liquid in the small bottle spilled out directly into the soil and then instantly evaporated. The legendary warrior was dumbfounded. No, no. He used his last bit of strength to quickly crawl to the side of the bottle, reaching out to grab a handful of soil and stuffed it directly into his mouth. No, no. This legendary warrior had already stuffed the third handful of soil into his mouth, and it seemed that he couldn't stop at all. Everyone was shocked by this legendary warrior's behavior, but there were many transcendents present, and at this time, they understood the warrior's mood very well. Because this bottle of medicine was really expensive, but it wasn't unreasonably expensive because its effect was absolutely amazing. But the problem was that Hauma didn't even have time to drink it before it was all spilled. Well, could it be that besides this, someone else also got God's tear from Master Kelowna? What is he doing eating soil? On the spectator stand, on the side of Kelowna Taoism Association, Song Howren looked at this legendary warrior eating soil with interest and was slightly surprised. Taoist Master 100 Tribulations, who was sitting next to him, said, "Usually a ghost eating soil is a poor ghost who has no one to burn incense for him. He has nothing to eat, so he can only eat soil." President, you mean this legendary warrior is possessed by a ghost? Song Howren said with a strange expression. And he's a poor ghost? Taoist Master 100 Tribulations laughed. Our Kelowna's ghost shouldn't possess this barbarian's body. But this guy looks really poor, and he's going to die young. Well, it shouldn't be like this. President, you know physiognomy? Song Howren asked curiously. Taoist Master 100 Tribulations laughed. Just a little, just a little. Song Howren shook his head inwardly. At this moment, the legendary warrior, Hauma, seemed to be lifted up by something and was thrown back to the spectator stand where he was originally sitting. At this moment, Hauma, who was kindly thrown back to the spectator stand by Kelowna's Shinryu, had a mouth full of soil, but his eyes were unfocused, and he seemed to have lost his soul. Hauma's whole body was paralyzed, and the people from the same group went up to check on him with grief and anger. The legendary warrior was muttering to himself as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he could only say Abba, Abba. The leader of the ancient Persian Shinryu team said loudly, Kelowna's Shinryu will remember this. Abba, Abba, oh, poor Hauma, you're the legendary warrior. Perhaps, after today, Hauma would become the legendary Abba. After throwing the legendary warrior back to his original seat, Kelowna's Shinryu looked around. Seeing that no one was going to stand on the spectator stand, he directly grabbed 3 pearls from the Big Dipper in the sky, and then jumped back to the Qian spectator stand, next to Fire Cloud, Evil God. Lord Long, Hauma seemed to have taken out something at the end, and it was supposed to be used. Maybe it was something he thought could turn the situation around. Fire Cloud, Evil God chuckled and said, Lord Long, you have great foresight. You killed your opponent before he even used his trump card. You are truly brilliant. Kelowna's Shinryu nodded lightly, and then didn't say anything. Enigmatic, he directly walked into the tunnel behind the spectator stand. Old man, you take care of them. I need to take a call. Lord Long, don't worry. Fire Cloud, Evil God laughed. Kelowna sighed, already had 6 pearls. It was a good sign. As soon as he walked into the tunnel, Kelowna's Shinryu directly hid in a corner, then picked up the phone, covered his mouth, and said in a low voice, "Hello? Sister Ren, are you looking for me? I was washing clothes, so I didn't hear the call, sorry." It's okay. I just wanted to see what you were doing. Xiaoxi, are you watching TV? It's very exciting. It's much better than Ultraman beating the little monsters. Quick, look. Okay, I'll turn on the TV after I dry the clothes. Good girl, Xiaoxi. Kelowna's Shinryu didn't have any foresight. It was just that when Hao Ma was about to take the pills, the phone suddenly rang and vibrated in her pocket, distracting her. Chapter 2003. The old man Fire Cloud shamelessly took the 3 beads and left. After Father Stella slapped him in the face, the church also had 3 beads. As for Kelowna's Shinryu, after defeating the legendary Abba warrior Hao Ma, he also took 3 beads. Currently, Kelowna's side was temporarily leading with 6 beads, faster than the other transcendents by a few lengths. Do you think this is a horse race? A few lengths? Madame Rin could not help but glare at old Q. A third-rate trash magazine, like them, naturally did not have their own channel, so they could only rely on an online platform to do a live text broadcast. I think it's more lively this way. Old Q thought for a while. Madame Rin immediately lost her temper and continued to pay attention to the live competition. She did not have any idea at first. When Fire Cloud, Demon God, showed his hand, she did not feel anything, but when Stella knocked him out, she felt this way. But when Kelowna's Shinryu used Shockwave, she felt that it was full. After that, when Long Shuo defeated the legendary warrior Hao Ma, she wanted to stand up and cheer. Okay? Who did not have a sense of national pride these days. They were just short of holding up banners and burning firecrackers to form a human wave chorus. The special effects were full, the budget was exploding, and the eyes were filled with holy light. This was what the so-called transcendence should be like. Many people even specially asked for leave today and stayed at home to watch the world flourish. That's right, at this moment the world's economy stopped. But after Kelowna's Shinryu left the stage, no one else stepped on the stage for a full 10 minutes. Trash. I already have 3 beads. I won't go on stage and wait for a spot. You don't even dare to go on stage. Father Stella shouted at the top of his voice. You spineless people still want to compete with me, Stella? Come on, come and challenge me if you have the ability. It was hard for Paladin Wasco to judge whether the church had gained the upper hand in the upcoming matches. But one thing was for sure, the church's hatred towards Stella had exploded. This was outside the city of abstinence. Sister Lavinia's baseball bat and folding stool could not subdue Stella at all. However, it had to be said that Father Stella's shout was very effective. It was like a signal. In a split second, hundreds of strong auras emerged from the 8 grandstands. The aurora-like brilliance filled the stage of Power Conference, and at the same time, a dozen figures dashed out together. Their goal was the many pearls arranged in the Big Dipper on the stage. After the dozens of figures took the lead, in the next moment, another dozens of black figures took action at lightning speed. However, although the number of remaining pearls was not small, it was not enough to provide 3 pearls for each person. In other words, the first wave of fierce battles had only officially begun. The evil god of Fire Cloud, Stella, Kelowna, and Shinryu made their moves as if it was the opening ceremony of the conference. This was the real Power Conference. In an instant, the 100 by 100 meter stage could not accommodate so many extraordinary moves at once. Among them were Dao arts, demonic secret arts, magic and shroud techniques, transformation techniques, and even burst techniques. Although the stage was huge, how could it withstand the bombardment of so many extraordinary powers? Seeing that the eruption of extraordinary powers was about to reach the 8 viewing platforms, the faces of the reporters in the media zone instantly turned pale. Faced with the onslaught of such terrifying powers, the puny, ordinary people couldn't even escape. At this time, Kelowna and Shinryu made their move. As the referee of the competition, she clasped her hands together and opened them. Instantly, a wall of golden light rose up from the edges of the stage, trapping all the transcendents who had entered to compete for the beads in this 100-meter by 100-meter space. The appearance of the golden wall blocked all the extraordinary powers that were shooting at random. This meant that Kelowna and Shinryu were setting up this barrier with their own power. However, even with such a sturdy barrier, Kelowna and Shinryu did not seem to be affected at all. Her voice was like the might of heaven, filling every corner of the conference venue. I will give you 5 minutes to fight for the pearls. After 5 minutes, return to your seats. Then, the competition will begin. Those who break the rules will be trapped in this barrier forever. This barrier, I can keep it open until the end of time. Try it if you don't believe me. Some people did not believe her and madly attacked the golden wall at the edge. However, even after hundreds of attacks, the golden wall did not budge at all. This terrifying barrier could be kept open until the end of time. How is that possible? The power of the earth is flowing to her. On the grandstand, the Ice Tower Master of the Magician Association said helplessly in a low voice, "Endless, endless." As expected, no one can defeat Shinryu in this land. I'm afraid that the consumption of this barrier cannot compare to the speed of replenishment. To the transcendence of this world, the true dragon is like a nuclear bomb that can be fired without limit. Every move of hers is an ultimate move, but we can't. Unless it is an instant kill situation, otherwise. The Scarlet Flame Tower Master, who hadn't spoken for a long time, suddenly said this. Then, he shook his head and suddenly said, "In order to defeat her, perhaps the only way is when she leaves this place. But the chances of victory are almost negligible." The Ice Tower Master bitterly smiled. Even without the power of the earth, her body is already the limit of what this world can contain. If he could trap her, won't she escape? The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master did not say anything. He thought that if he could lure Shinryu into the inhuman domain and then use the first Tower Master Hui Yao's control of the inhuman domain, would it be possible to trap Shinryu in Kelowna? Unfortunately, Hui Yao was just a guy who was obsessed with the pursuit of the truth of magic. He had no interest in the struggles of the modern world. Zhong Luoyue was listening to the conversation between the two Tower Masters. She looked at the battle on the stage and saw that Shinryu in Kelowna was able to suppress so many powerful people by herself. She finally understood. Kelowna. As long as they had Shinryu in Kelowna, they would be able to fight against the extraordinary of the entire world. In the long history of the world, the ancient transcendents had always classified the divine land as a forbidden zone for transcendence. It was not without reason. The outside world was very big. However, was Kelowna that small? Kelowna, this was the country with the largest population in the world. Zhong Luoyue suddenly lowered her head and looked at the bead in her hand. When the fire cloud, evil god, shot a bead in front of the Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower, the Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower threw it to her. It was obvious that the Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower did not care about the so-called advantage at the beginning of the battle. However, Zhong Luoyue was thinking about another matter. The Magician Association also wanted to get more members of the board of directors. Otherwise, the Magician Association, the oldest and most powerful organization in the European continent, only had so few members. It would not be good if word got out. However, whether it was the Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower or the Ice Tower Master, they did not seem to have any plans to make a move. What were they waiting for? What kind of opportunity? However, Zhong Luoyue was careful. She realized that in this competition, there were not many people from the Kelowna Dao Association or the Demon Race Alliance who participated. Most of the people who participated were the teams that did not attract too much attention during the Extraordinary Summit a few days ago. In an instant, Zhong Luoyue understood what the Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower and the Tower Master of the Ice Frost Tower were waiting for. Those who did not participate were waiting for the same thing. They must be aiming for an accurate sniper. These guys, it's useless to snatch. They must be able to protect it. On the spectator stand, the young Celestial Master of the Dragon Tiger Mountain sat with his legs together. There was a big dumpling that had just been unwrapped on his leg. He casually ate it with 2 wooden chopsticks and muttered, "What a group of old people. By the way, Mr. Farrell, we meet again." The young celestial master of the Dragon Tiger Mountain suddenly raised his head and looked behind him. In his inverted vision, there was an expressionless man wearing a wrinkled white suit. The young celestial master of the Dragon Tiger Mountain blinked and said, "There's only one dumpling left today. I'm looking forward to your performance," Farrell said indifferently. "Let's talk about it after we're full. You'll lose energy if you're hungry." Momo answered casually, "Besides, it's more likely that I'm here to join in the fun. After all, there are already so many seniors from Kelowna. Juniors like us should just stay outside and shout." "You have such strength," Farrell said. "Why don't you show it to the world? Even if you do, the world won't become peaceful. This kind of thing is very troublesome." Momo shrugged and said, "Besides, there's an old saying in Kelowna, there's always someone better than you. You'll never know how insignificant you are. It's too tiring to fight for fame and fortune. It's more practical to be an unaffiliated person. By the way, Mr. Farrell, do you want to read my fortune? I haven't opened the market today, so I don't have enough money for dinner. How about buying a safety charm? Wealth is easy for you to get," Farrell said indifferently. "It's enough for food and clothes." Momo smiled. "Do you know when a moneymaker is the happiest?" Farrell seemed to have entered Momo's rhythm, thinking for a while, "When you make money." Momo smiled. "When you count money, you don't need a lot. Just 3 to 5 bills will do. You just need to hold them in your hand and spit on your fingers. Then you count them one by one." Farrell kept silent for a while, walking out of Momo's rhythm, saying indifferently, "Thank you for the charm. I'll pay you back." Concentration charm is not a high-grade product. Momo waved his hand. 30 yuan for one. Just pay." Farrell didn't speak. He disappeared with a gust of wind. Momo sighed, saying helplessly, "Whoring without paying is bad." "Oh." The young heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain gazed at the stage inside the golden light wall, seeing a young man in an yin-yang Taoist robe. Behind the man in yin-yang Taoist robe, there was a huge shadow of a warrior's upper body. There were 3 beads in the man's hand. "Interesting." The young heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain smiled. "This should be the ghost-catching orthodoxy in Japan. Yin-yang master, do you want to go down and test it out?" 5 minutes was neither too long nor too short, especially when so many transcendents were squeezed together and fighting each other. It was too much for the eyes to take in. However, the golden light wall didn't intend to trap them completely. When a transcendent who stole 2 beads tried to leave, he really did pass through the golden light wall. But when he tried to return, he found that he could no longer enter the golden light wall. That was to say, he could leave at any time, but he couldn't enter again if he regretted. However, for those who had obtained 3 beads, it was meaningless to stay any longer. Instead, they had to risk their beads being snatched by others. Therefore, after the first 2 to 3 minutes of the chaotic battle, the extraordinary who had already obtained the pearl wisely chose to leave the stage. For them, even if they were challenged in the later stages of the competition, it was still better than being besieged by a group of people on stage. After 4 minutes and 30 seconds, all the beads in the Big Dipper had been snatched. Now, only dozens of transcendents who didn't get any beads were left on the stage, vexed. This time, the battle for the pearl was not a battle to the death. Everyone would not really fight to the death. However, it was inevitable that some of the transcendents would be injured during the battle. Fortunately, they were only lightly injured and did not affect the main event of the competition. 5 minutes had passed, and the golden light wall was shattered. Shinryu of Kelowna walked out, looking around at the crowd, saying indifferently, "The competition will start in 10 minutes. Whoever wants to challenge, come on the stage." In the corner of the stands, Rikyuj suddenly waved her hand in front of Riaz, as if nothing had happened. But in Riaz's vision, with the help of the collar, an arc-shaped light screen appeared in front of him. On the light screen, there were many avatars. With a closer look, he found that these avatars were the avatars of those who had obtained beads in the competition. The avatars were flashing with different colors. "Look carefully," The green avatars are easy to deal with. The yellow ones require more attention. As for the red ones, you need to activate your blue blood to deal with them. What about the black ones? Riaz couldn't help but ask curiously. These red and yellow colors were actually the real-time results obtained through the collection of on-site data, which was then transmitted back to the White Tower in the underwater city. With the help of the White Tower's ability, the calculation was made. If there is a black one, then I will go, Rick said directly. Then, she added, but there's no need for that. We only need to take the 3 beads this time. Then, should I go on stage and challenge a green one? Riaz played with a bead in his hand and thought for a moment. This bead was given to him by the fire cloud evil god at the beginning of the competition. Rick nodded and said, go. These humans on the surface are all coy, waiting to take advantage of us. Just looking at them makes me angry. The strong will always be strong. Momentum is built step by step. There are so many green ones. Which one should I choose? Riaz found it difficult to choose. Rick rolled her eyes and suddenly reached out to grab Riaz by the back of his collar. Then she threw him out and said, choose blindly. He appeared, the first challenger, Prince Riaz of Underwater City. Good job. I didn't expect that the first challenger would be a friend of our humans, a guest from the deep sea. It seems that the transcendents on the surface need to work hard. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that you are as nervous as I am. I wonder who this Prince of Underwater City will challenge. Please pay attention to the QR code on the screen, scan the code, and enter the guessing activity area. Then you can choose the student you like, the strong person you like. In short, do they really treat this competition as a large-scale reality show? Chapter 2004. The rule of the challenge was that the challenge party couldn't refuse. That was to say, the target of the challenge was very clear. The teams that had obtained the beads, especially those with 2 or more beads, were the prey of the challengers. Yes, prey. Perhaps the transcendents who had obtained the beads were fierce tigers in the forest, but even the fierce tigers would be outnumbered when there were so many wolves around. Because at this time, people found that there was no rule against repeated challenges. That was to say, the same person who obtained the beads might be challenged repeatedly. Thinking about it this way, the advantage they had at the beginning didn't seem to be an advantage. They might have just become famous, or they might have become the stepping stones of the latecomers without knowing it. They had jumped into a big hole. Of course, if they could hold on while being challenged, it would be a different story. In the end, it was still the fist that spoke. The power conference, this was the stage of power. At the same time, the prince of the undersea city was about to show his power to the humans on the ground. The prince, who still had a childish look on his face, finally chose his opponent at this moment. A hermit from Gaia Mountain of Goguryeo. As the prince of undersea city named his opponent, everyone's eyes fell on the person who was being challenged. Solitary Cloud, this little guy, is the first one to be challenged. It's really hard on him. Taoist Master 100 Tribulations suddenly revealed a smile on his face. Song Howren actually thought that Baijia Taoist should be invited to be the commentator for this conference. Baijia Taoist had lived for a very, very long time. According to the legend, Baijia Taoist was called Baijia Taoist because he had gone through 100 tribulations. Of course, 100 tribulations might be exaggerated, but it was enough to prove that this evergreen Taoist had lived for a long time. Living for a long time naturally had its benefits. The most direct one was that he could know a lot of unknown history, and even know many people that the young and middle-aged people didn't know. Song Howren recalled the information about the hermit from Gaia Mountain on the first day of the conference, and thought for a while, this time, the leader of the team from Gaia Mountain of Goguryeo is a Taoist called Solitary Cloud. President, are you an old friend of Solitary Cloud? Not really an old friend. Taoist Master 100 Tribulations chuckled and said, I only drank tea a few times. Goryeo used to be a desolate land of Taoism. Later, someone came to the Middle Earth and learned some Taoist techniques. He created a branch of Taoism. This Taoist lone cloud was a rising star on their side. During the Great Tang Dynasty, he had traveled to the land of Kelowna and learned more Tao techniques. After returning, he should have completed some of the systems that they had created. That was when we met. How many people have you drunk tea from? Song Howren shook his head inwardly. However, he was certain of one thing at this moment. Judging from the president's tone, it was obvious that he was not too fond of this wild Taoist system in the peninsula. Actually, Solitary Cloud is quite capable. The 100 Tribulation Taoist suddenly said, "It's a pity that he was born in the wrong time and place. Otherwise, with his talent, there would be a place for him in the Kelowna Taoist school." What a pity. The words "what a pity" seemed to have predicted the fate of Gul Goryo Mountain. At this moment, perhaps because of the premonition, the hermits from Mount Gao did not look too good. Of course, they did their best to keep their expressions as calm as possible. However, everyone's eyes were focused on them at this moment. Solitary Cloud, let me go for the first battle. You have the strongest magic power among us. Don't waste your energy in the meeting. This prince of the underwater city doesn't look that strong. Their so-called magic energy weapons should only be more advanced and more powerful than modern human weapons. The Taoist, named Solitary Cloud, pondered for a moment before finally nodding. His breathing was a little chaotic at the moment. During the battle just now, he had personally taken the 2 pearls from Mount Gao, but he had also used up a lot of energy at the same time. He'd need some time to recover. Be careful, if necessary. As he spoke, Solitary Cloud suddenly stuffed a small bottle into the hand of the person who had volunteered for the battle. Do as you see fit, Nangong. I will. The man named Nangong stood up and said in a deep voice, "The land of Kelowna has always looked down on us. Today, I'll let the Taoists of Kelowna see if my sword is weak." Nangong leaped up and landed steadily on the stage like a flying dragon. He stood with his hands behind his back. "I'm Nangong Do. I'm here to accept the challenge." Riaz felt that it was a little embarrassing to be thrown out of the stage. Look at him, he walked on air and had an extraordinary aura. However, Riaz couldn't think of a good way to greet this man who was wearing a rough sackcloth and had a sword at his waist. He could only learn from what he had learned from the human network in the past few days. He cupped his fists and said, "Hello, I'm Riaz. Today, friendship comes first, competition comes second. On the final stage, you only have to fight for first place. Friendship is never obtained through words. Take this." As he spoke, Nangong Do swung the sword at his waist like lightning. In an instant, sword lights flashed on the stage. At the same time, Nangong Do leaped high into the air, and the long sword in his hand emitted a dazzling lightning. A combination of martial arts and Taoist techniques. This is a good idea, but the power is a little lacking. On the Qian stage, the evil god of Fire Cloud nodded. Even the things created in this small place have their merits. Shinryu of Kelowna only glanced at him. It's such a waste that this old guy didn't give me a microphone to explain. Riaz seemed to be completely stunned. Facing Nangong Do's terrifying attack, he didn't seem to be able to react at all. He didn't move at all. "If you don't dodge, then don't blame me." With an angry roar, the sword flashing with lightning instantly slashed at Riaz's shoulder. With a loud boom, lightning flashed everywhere. More than half of the stage was surging with lightning snakes. However, the lightning sword only slashed at Riaz's shoulder and didn't cut into it. A blue light screen happened to block Riaz's shoulder. Nangong Do's eyes narrowed when he saw that his attack was ineffective. He instantly performed a set of sword techniques. Lightning flashed, and the lightning-infused sword slashed at various parts of Riaz's body like a storm. However, no matter how fast his sword was, every slash was blocked by a small blue light screen around Riaz's body. Finally, after performing a full set of sword techniques, Nangong Do could only put his sword away and secretly adjust his breathing. "Do you only know how to hide in this turtle shell?" Nangong Do yelled in a deep voice. He couldn't stand the frustration of not being able to break through this defense, no matter how he attacked. Riaz stuttered, "No, it's just that I have a hard time choosing. I can't think of how to defeat you. Sorry, I meant how to fight you." Riaz really had a hard time choosing right now. After going on stage, using the mysterious necklace's ability to connect directly with the underwater city's White Tower, the White Tower calculated every attack of this Gamma Mountain swordsman. Almost every time Nangong Do attacked, the White Tower provided Riaz with dozens of plans. He felt like his eyes were going blurry. He didn't know which plan to use, so he simply activated the magic barrier and let Nangong Do attack. After all, the magic barrier could last forever as long as there was enough magic barrier. It was also environmentally friendly. In the past, when he awakened the blue blood power but didn't inherit the control of the White Tower, he didn't need to think too much about it. Now that the underwater city's emperor was asleep, the White Tower was directly controlled by him and Lyoga. He wasn't used to it. "You idiot! Don't you know how to give orders and only provide the best plan?" The voice of the underwater cities which instantly exploded in Riaz's mind. This underwater city's prince opened his mouth and muttered, "Didn't we come to the surface to seek peaceful coexistence? If we beat him up, we'll offend him. If you don't even have the strength to beat him up, who would be willing to coexist peacefully with you?" "Okay," Riaz muttered. The small mental black room's communication only lasted for a moment. Riaz's attention returned to the stage and said seriously, "Mr. Nangong, I'm going to counterattack. You have to be careful." After saying that, Riaz pulled out a small round stick that was as long as a palm from his waist. He held it like he was holding a sword. In an instant, a blue light beam shot out from the round stick, accompanied by a buzzing sound. At this moment, Riaz took a deep breath and slowly assumed a posture. Underwater City also had its own sword skills, but they were all taught by the army's combat sword skills. Lyoga, damn, it can't be wrong. Lightsaber, this is origin power. So, it is Anakin Riaz. Prince Riaz's lightsaber is the same style, including 998. If you insta-kill him now, you'll get a Jedi flashcard. What happened outside could not affect Nangong Do, who was inside the stage. If the outside world could affect him so easily, he would not have been able to reach where he was today. "You also use a sword?" Nangong Do's gaze froze. Riaz nodded and said, "I've been learning for a month. Please enlighten me." Nangong Do suddenly smiled. He sneered. In a split second, the Taoist mana and the martial artist's true power intertwined with each other in a spiral fashion within Nangong Do's body. The violent power immediately erupted, and Nangong Do instantly split into 7 figures on the stage. Every figure seemed to be him. The 7 figures stabbed out at the same time. Prince Riaz's gaze flickered, and a magic energy lightsaber in his hand stabbed out at the 3rd figure on the left. What caught people off guard was that the magic energy lightsaber in the hands of the underwater city prince instantly shot out 30 to 40 meters long. What kind of sword skill is this? With Nangong Do's furious roar, the other 6 figures instantly disappeared. The 3rd figure on the left, which was his main body, dangerously placed a sword in front of Nangong Do's chest, blocking the tip of the lightsaber. "I'm going to attack. Be careful." The 30 to 40 meter long magic energy lightsaber instantly slashed on the stage. The terrifying heat contained in the lightsaber instantly cut the floor like tofu, and the buzzing sound was even more terrifying than the sword hum of a swordsman. Could this magic energy lightsaber directly melt a person's body if they accidentally touched it? The more Nangong Do fought, the more shocked he became. He did not believe that this underwater city prince had only learned sword skills for a month. This guy was clearly a terrifying swordsman, but he could always attack and suppress Nangong Do's moves as if he could predict the future. The more Nangong Do fought, the more depressed he became. Under this predictive mode, he could not even use 60% of his strength. However, the changes on the stage were like clouds to people who did not understand sword skills. Only people who had a certain level of understanding of power could understand the strangeness and horror of the underwater city prince's attacks. "Mr. Mingyi, this is a very terrifying martial Dao realm, but it doesn't seem like it. Could it be that the underwater city prince has the ability to predict the future? Maybe it's an advanced technique for detection? Just like how the Tower Master of the Radiance Tower once wanted to develop the Laplacian demon technique. By grasping all the variables, one can grasp the dynamics of the future. But even the Tower Master of the Radiance Tower failed. Could this be the advanced realm of sword immortals? The legendary sword heart illumination? It doesn't seem like it. Did you see that? This underwater city prince's movements don't seem to be of his own volition, but something is driving his body to move. He's not a true martial artist. This is an external force. Fire Cloud, evil god, suddenly said. At this moment, Kelowna Shinryu frowned, and then her eyes turned golden. In an instant, the underwater city prince's clothes became almost transparent in Long Shirua's eyes. However, under this set of clothes, there was a seemingly thin, silver-gray, skin-tight battle suit. Did Lord Long discover something? Fire Cloud, evil god, suddenly asked in a low voice. He felt a slight change in Kelowna Shinryu. Kelowna Shinryu muttered to herself for a moment, and then slowly said, "The underwater city has a mysterious white tower. This white tower is the crystallization of all the wisdom of the underwater city civilization over countless years. This underwater city prince is wearing a battle suit that can be controlled by the white tower. Through real-time calculations, the white tower predicted Nangong Do's attack method in advance, and then gave feedback. Artificial intelligence? Fire Cloud, evil god, couldn't help but frown. Kelowna Shinryu shook her head and said, "It's not artificial intelligence. The people of the underwater city call this the wisdom of their ancestors. The white tower of the underwater city is the final destination of the souls of the people of the underwater city after they die. You can think of it as Nangong Do not fighting this prince, but facing the wisdom of countless ancestors of the underwater city. It's like you make a move, and then thousands of experts, or even more, are thinking about how to break your attack together. Is this considered cheating?" Fire Cloud, evil god, couldn't help but smile bitterly. The feeling of countless people studying and breaking a move was really uncomfortable for a martial artist. Longshaw said indifferently, "If I don't say, who will know? Even if they know, what can they do? This is originally an extraordinary power that belongs to the underwater city." Fire Cloud, evil god, shook his head, and then suddenly asked curiously, "Lord Long, where did you learn this?" It stands to reason that even the agency, as the first party to come into contact with the underwater city, can't find out so many secrets. "Of course I have my sources," Kelowna Shinryu snorted and said, "Shinryu, why don't you be the Shinryu?" Fire Cloud, evil god, opened his mouth with a strange expression. Did this guy eat a bucket of gunpowder today? Another special source of information? A guy like you who only knows how to play games at home all day? Fire Cloud, evil god, finally shook his head, glancing at the stage, and suddenly said, "It's time to decide the winner." The magic energy lightsaber suddenly pierced through Nangong Do's shoulder. The hermit swordsman from Mount Gamma screamed, and his body was directly pushed to the edge of the stage by the explosively long lightsaber, and was about to be directly pushed out. But just as Nangong Do's body was about to fall off the stage, he suddenly stomped his foot into the floor. Then Nangong Do roared and seemed to stuff something into his mouth, and bit it. Then wild lightning burst out from Nangong Do's body, and a bolt of lightning directly shot into the sky. At the same time, Nangong Do used his palm as a blade and actually cut the lightsaber in half. His entire body was bathed in a faint blue light, and his aura instantly increased by several times. Whoosh! Nangong Do's figure instantly disappeared. The moment he reappeared, he was already half a meter away from Riaz, and punched the chest of the underwater city prince. The magic energy shield directly flashed, but the punch instantly sent the underwater city prince flying. The magic energy shield trembled, and Riaz flipped in the air in a slightly awkward manner before landing on the stage. He subconsciously looked back, but there was still a distance of about a palm's distance, and he almost fell off the stage. Riaz couldn't help but be surprised. The power of the magic energy shield wasn't constant, and it would automatically adjust the output of magic energy according to the strength of the attack. A good magic energy could be used more efficiently, but Nangong Do's punch suddenly increased in power, and even surpassed the strength of the magic energy shield. At the same time, Nangong Do's originally green avatar suddenly turned yellow. This thing, Kelowna's Shinryu frowned. Didn't that so-and-so take it out, but didn't have time to use it? The legendary warrior, Haoma, Fire Cloud, evil god, suddenly said with a serious expression, "It seems that something bad has leaked into this convention. From Fire Cloud, evil god's point of view, you always have to pay for what you get. A medicine like this that could suddenly give a person great power must have terrible side effects. Just like some martial artists' explosive abilities, it would often cause great damage to the martial artist's vitality and even directly kill them." Chapter 2005. Transcendents had very good eyesight, and many of them had better eyesight than telescopes. Therefore, when Nangong Do took out something and put it in his mouth, many transcendents' hearts skipped a beat. In fact, this kind of psychological activity had existed in their hearts since the legendary ABA warrior, Haoma, had failed to take the potion. But at that time, many people still had a trace of hope in their hearts. Perhaps Haoma had coincidentally met the legendary secret apothecary who was about to leave, and shamelessly paid an astonishing price to buy a tear of God. Yes, that must be it. However, when Nangong Do used the tear of God in front of everyone, they knew that they shouldn't be relying on luck. The legendary secret apothecary, the witch Heptalum, had sold the tear of God to other people. Many people, the transcendents who had the tear of God, suddenly realized a problem. Should they use the tear of God they had in their hands during the meeting? If they didn't use it, but if others used it and won, they would be the ones who suffer a loss. If they used it, others would also use it, and everyone's strength would increase by the same amount. In the end, it was no different from not using it. If everyone agreed not to use it, then what was the point of spending so much money to buy the tear of God? If they used it, then everyone would use it together, but the result would not change. Whether they used it or not, it seemed to be a big trap. The key was that when this trap appeared, they willingly jumped into it. You could say that Master Pansy was scamming people, but the effects of the tear of God were amazing. It was definitely worth it. You could say that he wasn't scamming people, but now it was possible that everyone would have copy. What, you have the tear of God? What coincidence, I have it too. Just like that. Damn it, we were actually tricked by this evil secret apothecary. But obviously, it was too late to say anything now, because they had already fallen into the trap, and they couldn't get out. Bang! That wicked witch, give me back my life. They really lost their lives? They seemed to have realized something. On the stands, a young man and a young woman were sitting there. They had been sitting there all this while, and among so many extraordinary organizations and media, they did not attract anyone's attention. Boss Luo was talking to Miss Maid. The servant girl chuckled and didn't care. "It seems that your reaction is a little slow. Perhaps it was because the name Pansy had too much credibility in the world of secret pharmacists. There was no problem with the secret medicine of the Pansy. The effect was very good, and it was worth the money. Presumably, next time, there would be people willing to buy it like it was nothing." Boss Luo couldn't help but think of something interesting. It was said that some cute and silly people would help others count the money after being sold. It seemed that Miss Maid was the one who sold him. "Master, when do you plan to complete Miss Zijuan's request?" Boss Luo suddenly became lazy. He reached out and lifted a lock of Miss Maid's hair. He said softly, "Can't wait anymore." "How could that be?" Miss Maid's eyelashes moved slightly. She smiled and said, "If it's not so fast, I want to see Eleanor. You want to wake her up?" Boss Luo asked curiously. Miss Maid shook her head. "On the contrary, I don't want to wake her up. She still has a lot of holidays." Boss Luo didn't ask. He patted the back of her hand and said casually, "Don't scare Miss Lancelot. After all, I haven't officially met Eleanor yet." At the same time, on the stage, Nangong Do's momentum was still rising. Facing Nangong Do, who had been promoted to a yellow name monster, Riaz's attention was much more focused. Although he occasionally complained to Lyoga every day, he trusted each other from the bottom of his heart. When Rikugu said that as long as it was an opponent with a green avatar, Riaz did not feel too nervous. It was because of this trust that when Nangong Do turned into a yellow-named monster, he immediately focused on the fight. Because of his focus and caution, Riaz even activated part of his blue blood power. This should be a strategy to deal with a red name monster. The blue blood power was a very special power. After this power was activated, his brain activity would greatly increase. At the same time, his sensitivity would be suppressed, and his rationality would continue to increase as the blue blood power was activated. His reaction, judgment, and even temperament would unconsciously change because of the blue blood. Strictly speaking, Riaz, who activated the blue blood power, was like a different person. Riaz actually didn't like this blue blood state. It even made him think of the tragedy that happened to Louis XXXIX. A trace of pure blue flashed in Riaz's pupils. At this time, Riaz pulled out the second magical lightsaber from his belt. The two lightsabers, one in front and one behind, were in the posture of the underwater city's military. What Riaz didn't know was that because he took out the second lightsaber, some people had crazily spammed some strange words in the online world. Dual sword flow. Trash Kirito finally remembered his main account. Trash UW? Something like that. Nangong Do wasn't too surprised that the prince of the underwater city took out the second lightsaber and used the dual sword flow formation. He was in the tier of God state, and at this time his strength was rapidly increasing and his confidence was unprecedentedly strong. With that punch, he had already noticed that the magical shield of the prince of the underwater city could be shaken. Therefore, he believed that as long as the power of his attack increased, he could directly break the shield of the prince of the underwater city. This prince's body must be quite weak. The victory or defeat would be decided by the next attack. Without saying much, Nangong Do directly poured all his power into the next attack. The flashing lightning around him suddenly turned into a pool of lightning that spread across the entire stage. Nangong Do stomped his foot, and the entire stage instantly split in half. At this moment, a lightning dragon rose from the crack. Seeing this, Riaz took a deep breath, lowered his body, and ran like a leopard. The lightsaber in his hand swung repeatedly, splitting the lightning that shot at him. He swam in the huge pool of lightning, perfectly dodging and splitting the dense lightning strikes. Fast. In everyone's eyes, the prince of the underwater city reacted abnormally fast at this time. His movements were also fast, but in fact his speed wasn't that fast. It was precision. The real reason was precision, as if he had done countless calculations. Riaz was like a dancer on a tightrope. Suddenly, the prince of the underwater city jumped up, and his whole body met the terrifying lightning dragon released by Nangong Do. He even jumped into the mouth of the Thunderlord dragon, allowing the Thunderlord dragon to swallow him whole. "You want to die? Then don't blame me." Nangong Do roared angrily, and he was like an arrow on a bow. This lightning dragon was a forbidden technique, and Nangong Do had never used its full power since it was created. Now, with the help of the Tear of God, he could finally unleash the full power of this forbidden technique. Lightning dragon. Twist. Nangong Do swung his long sword, and the lightning dragon instantly twisted its body. It circled, shrunk, and shrunk, trying to use the terrifying lightning power in the lightning dragon to crush this prince of the underwater city. In the end, the lightning dragon suddenly collapsed, and a huge lightning ball instantly formed in the sky above the stage. The light was enough to illuminate an area of several kilometers. Many transcendents were shocked by Nangong Do's attack. The world was so big, and there were no transcendents. If one didn't see them for themselves, how would one know if they were strong or not? Moreover, this was an era where the world's spirit energy was rejuvenated, and newborns could even give birth to children with superpowers. In this era, thanks to the surge in the world's vitality, transcendents could even feel that they were improving every day. However, would the prince of the underwater city lose just like that? If the prince of the underwater city was annihilated by this lightning ball, would a war between the humans on the surface and the underwater city break out? Nangong, you're too impulsive. In the stands, among the hermits from the Gamma Mountain, a soft sigh suddenly came. He was the rare genius that the 100 Tribulations Taoist had mentioned, the hermit's solitary cloud, who had perfected the Gwali Taoist arts by himself and called himself the new system. No, the prince of the underwater city isn't dead. A sudden scream came from the audience. The huge lightning ball was broken by a blue flash, and at the same time, a figure rapidly fell toward Nangong-do. It was the prince of the underwater city. At this moment, Riaz was holding two lightsabers, one in front and one in back. His face was as calm as the calm ocean. The moment he landed, Riaz tapped his feet and shot toward Nangong-do like a sharp arrow. The lightsabers in his hands slashed toward Nangong-do like rain. At this moment, Nangong-do had used up all his strength, and he hadn't recovered his new strength yet. Even with the Tear of God state, which increased his strength to the limit, he couldn't withstand the fact that he had just used up all his bullets and hadn't had time to reload yet. He could only use the lightsabers in his hands to defend himself. However, the lightsabers in Prince Riaz's hands suddenly turned crimson, and the flame-like red light illuminated the two of them in an instant. The two lightsabers were still attacking fiercely without stopping. Their figures moved crazily on the stage, and in the end, Nangong-do was forced to the edge of the stage. At this moment, Nangong-do finally recovered from the big move. Just as he was about to counterattack, he saw Prince Riaz look at Nangong-do's lightsabers at the same time. In an instant, the heat of the lightsabers directly melted and cut this ancient sword apart. Nangong-do was shocked. At this moment, Riaz lifted the lightsaber, spun around, and knocked Nangong-do's chest with the lightsaber. The heavy blow finally sent the Hermit of Mount Jiaju flying and landing outside the stage. Nangong-do's body directly crashed into the railing at the bottom of the stands. He looked at the broken sword in his hand in shock. The power from the Tear of God still hadn't dissipated, and he even recovered to his peak state. However, he lost. I didn't lose. My feet haven't landed yet. His body was only knocked into the railing of the stands. His feet didn't land on the ground. The Transcendence looked on coldly. This roar was a traditional art of the Goryeo Peninsula. I didn't lose. As if he was possessed, Nangong-do roared and was about to charge onto the stage again with a broken sword. At this moment, Kelowna's Shinryu suddenly snorted and flicked his finger. A golden light flashed, and Nangong-do's leg was instantly penetrated by the golden light. He lost control and fell to the ground. Damn it, I told you. I didn't lose. Nangong-do endured the pain and propped himself up. On the stands, Long Shura didn't waste time and raised her hand again. At this moment, a calm voice sounded. Jiaju Mountain admits defeat for this round. As he spoke, a pearl shot toward Riaz, who was on the stage. The person who shot the pearl was none other than the leader of the hermits from Gaia Mountain, the man with the Taoist name Solitary Cloud. Then Solitary Cloud reached out and grabbed the enraged Nangong-do from the stage and threw him onto the seat. Solitary Cloud cupped his hands and said calmly, "His Highness Undersea City's Prince's sword technique is brilliant. Solitary Cloud is impressed. Also, thank you for showing mercy. Nangong-do isn't skilled enough, so he deserves to lose." In the end, Riaz showed mercy and didn't cut open Nangong-do's shoulder with the lightsaber. Powerful people could see it clearly and knew what Solitary Cloud meant. At this moment, Nangong-do calmed down, but his face was pale and his eyes were filled with shame and discomfort. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breath, but the Tear of God was still there, and there were at least 8 to 9 minutes left. Thinking that the Tear of God, which was worth 30 years of his life, was wasted, Nangong-do was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. On the Chin platform, Fire Cloud, Evil God had an as expected look on his face. Didn't I tell you? How can this kind of medicine that can greatly increase one's power not have any side effects? Look, the bad karma is coming. Kelowna's Shinryu. Long Shura didn't bother to pay attention to him. She knew why Nangong-do spat out blood, but she didn't bother to explain. These shameless people on the peninsula even said that the Kelowna's Shinryu was theirs. They deserved it if they spat out blood. On the stage, after Riaz took the bead from Taoist, Lone Cloud, he immediately exited the blue blood state. He returned to his original self and put away the lightsaber at his waist. At this time, there's a lot of applause from the surrounding stands. Those extraordinary powerhouses in this challenge saw the demeanor of this prince of Seabed City. Since Riaz didn't kill anyone, he won a lot of favor from them. F***CK. So it's like this. However, at this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came from the media area. The voice was so excited that it was easy for those transcendents with sharp eyes and ears to notice its existence. When some of the transcendents cast their gazes on the media person, they saw that he had hurriedly stretched out his body with a microphone in his hand and said excitedly, I don't know what to say. Anyway, you'll know when you see our channel. I'll upload the video that I just took. Soon, the video of Riaz slashing Nangong Do with his two-blade lightsaber appeared on the internet. This video was smooth and clear, comparable to a blockbuster with special effects. Even the audience who had just watched the live broadcast couldn't help but exclaim again. But things weren't that simple. The media person who attracted everyone's attention because of his exclamation turned on his microphone and said, I'm a photography enthusiast. Since this undersea city prince used a lightsaber in the competition, I couldn't help but use some light trace photography techniques. Anyway, you'll know when you see the final product. This is the light trace of His Highness when he appeared in the lightning ball. That was a picture. In the picture, it was the last time the undersea city prince waved the lightsaber. Then, they saw the trace of the two red lightsabers all the way. It was a picture, a portrait. The red light and shadow depicted the smiling face of His Highness Undersea City Prince's fiancée, Miss Lyoga. The girl in the light and shadow portrait was gentle and quiet at this moment, agile and moving with a flower-like smile. The Witch of Undersea City in the stands suddenly stood up and looked at Riaz on the stage. The Undersea City Prince stood there. He stood in the middle of that beautiful smile. Chapter 2006. Young Prince Transcendent. The Prince of Undersea City had everything in the dreams of young people. Not only did he defeat his opponent beautifully, but he even painted with sword light and integrated his love for his fiancée into his swordsmanship that was like a dance. This implicit feeling should have been hidden quietly, but it was displayed in front of the world because of a photography enthusiast. The implicit and elegant love of the Prince of Undersea City crazily absorbed the hearts of thousands of girls who were sitting in front of the screen and watching the live broadcast at this moment. Even the attention rate of the Prince of Undersea City instantly surpassed the vampire girl of the Magician Association, who had been popular because of her cute persona in the past few days. He became the new center of attention among the young people. Not to mention a woman. Even a man like me can't help but have a girl's heart. This Undersea City's prince is really King outstanding. Old Q exclaimed in amazement at this time. But in this craze, Rin seemed to have a different idea. She frowned and muttered, Why do I feel that this prince looks like he's also in a daze? Maybe the prince didn't think that his hidden feelings could be discovered? Old Q casually found a reason. Auntie Rin shook her head, then silently liked on the official account of Undersea City's network. Can Ani have a girl's heart? Ani Rin's heart also exploded. After this battle, the Prince of Undersea City didn't seem to intend to continue the challenge. As for Taoist, Solitary Cloud, from Gayuo Mountain, who had lost the game and now only had one bead left, he didn't seem to have the intention to immediately fight again and turn the tables. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Riaz slowly returned to his original stand. No one chose to challenge the Prince of Undersea City at this time. They probably knew that after such a battle full of dog food, they would be scolded if they challenged the Prince of Undersea City again. Being beaten wasn't terrible. Transcendence actually disliked being scolded the most. His Majesty the Emperor is quite diligent. In the corner of the stands, Boss Luo smiled. He looked at Riaz on the martial arts stage, then looked at the Witch of Undersea City on the other side of the stands. As if he couldn't hold it in, he took out his camera and secretly took a picture of this scene. Boss Luo hadn't picked up his camera for a long time, so he couldn't help but take a few more pictures. When the photos were out, Boss Luo picked one and sent it out with a wave of his hand. In the end, the photo was sent to the White Tower at the bottom of the sea, where it quietly fell into the sleeping quarters of Emperor Louis XXXIX. Riaz, who had returned to his seat, looked at Lyoga anxiously. Underwater cities which, Lyoga, sat there expressionlessly as if nothing had happened. Lyoga, sit down. Lyoga said indifferently, the whole world is watching. Don't just stand there. You're now representing Undersea City. Pay attention to your image. Okay. Riaz nodded and sat down. With a smile on his face, he welcomed the gaze of the world. Lyoga, actually just now I know you don't know. Underwater cities which said indifferently, I taught you swordsmanship. How can I not know? Then you, Lyoga said faintly, yes, I taught you this swordsmanship. How can I not know? But I also didn't know. Riaz, do you know this is the swordsmanship created by Louis? I don't know. I never knew. I always didn't know. Louis, will he wake up? Underwater cities, which lowered her head at this time. Her hands tightly grasped her pants. There were a few drops of wet tears on her pants. Riaz just remembered that Lyoga didn't show any trace of sadness since the Battle of Undersea City. She indifferently dealt with everything in Undersea City after Louis XXXIX fell into a deep sleep. Reconstruction, planning, until the landing on the overworld. There was no time for her to calm down and think. Such a short time was not even enough for Lyoga, who was responsible for the future of the entire Undersea City, to have a short private time. There will be a way. Riaz took a deep breath at this time, plucked up his courage, put his arm around Lyoga's shoulder, and said softly, there must be a way to wake His Majesty up. If there is no other way, I will look for the black card, no matter what the price is. Lyoga's body suddenly stiffened, and then she muttered, my face for now. I will lend it to your shoulder. This girl, really, Riaz couldn't help but smile. Okay, I asked you to lend me your face. He patted Lyoga's shoulder and said softly, also, don't think of that siren at this time. I was just wondering if Helen would also see this scene on TV. I'm dead. At this time, Undersea City's prince suddenly felt like he was tricked by Emperor Louis XXXIX. Looking at the scene of Undersea City's prince hugging his fiancée, many people smiled. Are you touched? If I were you, I would be touched too. Even many powerhouses who were still single couldn't help but think in their hearts, if I could be so romantic in the past, I would have a house full of children and grandchildren already, right? Who doesn't have a childhood love? Two innocent young people, but they still say that they were young back then. Just when everyone was immersed in this beautiful scene, even the irritable Kelowna Shinryu quieted down a lot, as if he was poked. There was still one person who was not touched. That person was the hermit Nangong Do from Gamma Mountain. He, who had just woken up, directly spat out a mouthful of blood after learning about this matter. After receiving a critical hit of 10,000 points, he fainted again. At this time, the people from the Kelowna administration sent a group of people to quickly go to the martial arts arena. They were here to repair the broken martial arts arena. The broken martial arts arena was now being repaired at a remarkable speed. It seemed that, in about 10 minutes, the conference could be restarted. In fact, even many of the 12 knights, including the knight mechanism, didn't know one thing. That was Lancelot was actually a person who loved cleanliness and even liked to take a bath very much. Her clothes were always spotless, and her room was always as tidy as a model room. She even had obsessive-compulsive disorder. Even the cups and pills that she gave to Her Majesty had to be placed in a fixed pattern. Of course, the Queen probably had a deep understanding of Lancelot's stubbornness. For Lancelot, misophobia and obsessive-compulsive disorder seemed to be innate. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how conflicted she felt when she was caught by Farrell. She was clearly not participating in the battle, but she was inexplicably trained for an entire night. Her entire body was dirty. She couldn't even express it. Only at this moment, in the resting room of the spectator stand, the shower room belonged to her. Lancelot was instantly intoxicated by the feeling of the hot water flowing all over her body, as if countless pairs of white hands were gently caressing her body. the moment the water flowed through the buds. She was even a little reluctant to leave this place. In fact, since entering the venue, the youngest 12th knight, a female knight, had already taken a shower for more than an hour. The commotion outside was very loud, but Lancelot was still reluctant to leave this place. She had already completed the Queen's order, and it wasn't time for her to care about the results of the power conference. Suddenly, Lancelot's gaze froze, and she felt that someone had broken into the shower room. Almost at the moment when she felt it, Lancelot directly picked up the towel and covered her body. The shower wasn't turned off, and under the cover of the sound of running water, Lancelot silently chanted the elven incantation and the exclusive weapon that belonged to the 12th knight. Lancelot directly appeared in her hand. A black longsword. Controlling the magic sword in her hand, Lancelot directly pierced through the door of the shower room, and the door was instantly torn apart. At this time, the black magic sword pointed directly at a beautiful woman with long blonde hair and blue eyes. She had seen this woman before when she was in the British Fog City Theater. This woman seemed to know Her Majesty the Queen, but at this time, this woman's hand was obviously holding the treasure of the British royal family, the ceremonial sword Catanat. She was careless. Lancelot was secretly alarmed. Before she came in, she had set up multiple enchantments to prevent people from bumping into this shower room. Catanat was the precious treasure of the British royal family, so she naturally couldn't directly take it with her when taking a shower. She could only place it outside the shower room. But at this time, it had already fallen into the hands of this blonde woman. At this time, facing the stab of the magic sword in Lancelot's hand, the blonde woman holding the ceremonial sword, Catanat, simply waved her hand. The precious ceremonial sword directly hit Lancelot's magic sword. Lancelot, who was afraid that it would damage the ceremonial sword, couldn't help but be shocked and hurriedly retracted her strength. However, a huge force came from Catanat and directly hit her back. Lancelot flew back to the place where she was drenched in the rain. The splashing water once again drenched her body, but this time it was separated by a pure white bath towel. What a perverted performance. The blonde woman said indifferently, "I knew that your nature is like this." Lancelot was a little confused when she heard this, but she gritted her teeth and quickly stood up again. Her body even showed the mark of an elf. She wanted to complete the armor of heritage here and take back the ceremonial sword. "I didn't come here to fight with you," the blonde woman said indifferently. The blonde woman said indifferently. She held the ceremonial sword and placed it flat on her palm. In an instant, the ceremonial sword glowed faintly. You can actually activate the power of Catanat. Lancelot couldn't help but blurt out, "Do you have the blood of the royal family?" "I don't, but your queen does," the blonde woman said indifferently. "This is the spirit she sent to Catanat. Even though I don't know why you brought Catanat here from Britain, it's obvious that the real reason you brought it here isn't what you think it is." "It's not what I know." Lancelot frowned. The queen gave her the precious ceremonial sword and brought it to the Forbidden City. Wasn't it to use the ceremonial sword to force Farrell to participate in the power conference and win a place in the board of directors for the Knight mechanism? Originally, Lancelot had felt that the Queen's order was a bit risky, because no one knew if Farrell would still abide by the Knight's oath from back then. However, the true meaning wasn't to subdue Farrell. "You can rest now." The blonde woman suddenly shook her head and then flicked her finger. "You should sleep. No matter which one it is, you're the same." What? Lancelot felt his mind go blank for a moment, and then he slowly fell to the ground. A faint smile appeared on the blonde woman's face. She even squinted her eyes. "Teacher Eleanor, you shouldn't have chosen to take a vacation in this sub-world. You can't blame me for this." As she spoke, the blonde woman made throughout the ceremonial sword in her hand. The ritual sword was suspended in the air, then it fell straight down and finally stood upright on the ground. A gem on the hilt of the ritual sword released a ray of light at this time. In an instant, a graceful and energetic old woman appeared in front of Miss Maid. It was Her Majesty, the Queen of Britain. "I'm still wondering how long it will take for you to activate the gem in Catanat." "Teacher, long time no see." The Queen's figure smiled. Teacher, didn't make things difficult for Lancelot, did you? Miss Maid said indifferently. How do you know that I'll appear? The queen laughed. After all, the years of learning from teacher weren't in vain. I vaguely remember that teacher said that there are not many things in Britain that are worth your effort. This ceremonial sword is barely the same. So I thought that if I send the ceremonial sword to a place outside of Britain, teacher might be able to understand what I mean. What a naughty student. Miss Maid chuckled. The queen said softly, I haven't heard teachers reproach for so many years. It's very kind. Miss Maid said indifferently, Cat in at, is the inheritance of Britain's glory. Are you willing to part with it? The queen smiled and said calmly, if Britain ends up as a mediocre place in the future transcendence generation, it will only be a joke if we still cling to our former glory. Besides, I can't bring the so-called glory into my tomb. What do you want? Miss Maid's voice became more indifferent. The queen put away the admiration on her face and said seriously, I hope that the knight mechanism can stand firmly in the board of directors after the conference. The queen didn't mention how many beads to seize, nor did she mention how many rounds to win. Her request was to let the knight mechanism stand firmly in the board of directors of the Transcendence Association in the future. This wasn't a simple request. A simple request wouldn't make the Queen of Britain take out the royal family's ceremonial sword, cat and at. Miss Maid stared at the queen and didn't say anything. The queen didn't avoid this gaze. She was calm. Miss Maid pondered for a moment and said slowly, Elizabeth, you should understand that since you took the initiative to make a deal with me, our relationship will no longer be the same as before. Think carefully. Her Majesty said softly, I've been thinking about it for a long time. As a student, there will be a day when I need to leave my teacher and face the outside world alone. From the moment I graduated, will I be closer to you, teacher? Miss Maid nodded directly and then said indifferently, I think my master will like this ceremonial sword. The queen sighed slowly and nodded. I think that Mr. will also like it. After all, in my opinion, that Mr. is a very particular gentleman. Besides, that Mr. is really a good match for you, teacher. Miss Maid said indifferently, now that things have come to this, even flattering words won't work, Elizabeth. How can that be? The queen smiled gently. I really think so. You should take your medicine, Elizabeth. Miss Maid waved her hand directly. The queen's figure disappeared instantly. Chapter 2007. Later, Lancelot woke up slowly. But she was not in the shower room, but on the bench outside. The water stains on her body had dried up, and even her hair had become dry and loose. Lancelot suddenly sat up with the towel. However, there was no trace of the mysterious blonde woman in the shower. As for the royal ceremonial sword, the ceremonial sword was still there, standing quietly not far from her at this moment. Lancelot walked over carefully until she held the ceremonial sword in her hand. Her face was still full of confusion. That person, that blonde woman, what was her purpose? Since the other party could knock her down quietly, it meant that she had the ability to kill her easily. But she didn't do so and didn't even take away the ceremonial sword. This place was too dangerous, and she couldn't stay here for a long time. Without the queen's order, she didn't have to participate in the power conference at all. Farrell also didn't watch from the side, so she could take the opportunity to leave and send the ceremonial sword back to the British border safely. This female knight, who was obsessed with cleanliness and liked to take a bath, started to plan the route to leave without saying anything. However, at that moment, a phone call from Her Majesty the Queen was directly connected to her phone. Lancelot, are you interested in helping Gareth? I see that he is alone and seems to be suffering. Why don't you stay and help him? Although Her Majesty's tone sounded as if she was negotiating with him, Lancelot understood that he had no reason to refuse. The female knight, who also swore her loyalty in front of the ceremonial sword, directly said in a low voice, I understand. Your Majesty. Boss Luo gave Miss Maid a lot of authority and even part of the bargaining power. He actually tried to give the Black Soul envoys a limited bargaining power before, but he failed. In fact, from a certain point of view, Nan Xiaonan called the Lady Boss before actually wasn't inappropriate. She was called Miss Maid, but her authority was indeed the standard lady boss. Katina, Boss Luo blinked. He knew that business had come knocking, and it seemed to be a good business. Of course, since the shop had always delivered the goods first, the ceremonial sword was still in Lancelot's hands. This was what Miss Maid told Boss Luo when she came back and sat beside him. The quality of faith spiritual equipment like Catanat is pretty good. I saw that the other party's request wasn't too high, so I decided to agree. Miss Maid looked into Boss Luo's eyes and said, "Of course, it's up to you, Master." Boss Luo smiled casually. "You know I won't reject you." Miss Maid's eyes brightened slightly. "Is it okay if I want to complete Miss Zijuan's request now?" Boss Luo gently rubbed her fingers and said softly, "I also know that you won't ruin my mood, right? You will know when is the best time to act. Then wait a little longer." Miss Maid looked calm. "My master." The martial arts arena was repaired in less than 8 minutes. Of course, it was repaired with supernatural power. Anyway, supernatural power was no longer a secret, and this level of supernatural power didn't need to be secretive. But who would be the next to challenge him? The atmosphere was tense again. To everyone's surprise, when the announcement was made, a figure stepped onto the newly renovated arena. And this challenger was none other than the hermit from Mount Gaia, who had suffered a crushing defeat in the previous battle. It was a middle-aged Taoist wearing a black Taoist robe with a jade flute in his hand. Solitary Cloud, the leader of the hermits in Mount Jiayin, the genius who led the transcendence in the peninsula, all by himself. Taoist Lone Cloud stood on the martial arts platform without any sadness or joy, as if he had completely integrated into the environment. I didn't expect that there would be such a profound Taoist on this small peninsula. On one of the stands, Senior Yang Taizi exclaimed in a low voice. He didn't stay with so many sects of the Tao Association, but chose to stay in an inconspicuous place. With Mr. Song's group of weird guys, he couldn't sneak into the territory of the Taoist Association. Could he? Chui Ziyuan. Mr. Song suddenly nodded. "I've heard of this name. He's a figure from the Tang Dynasty, but I didn't expect that he's still alive." "You sound like you're from that era, too?" Senior Yang Taizi couldn't help squinting at him, but didn't say anything, although he had a ruddy face and white hair. In fact, Senior Yang Taizi wasn't a senior at all in the Taoist Association. He was even a junior. "Fanxing, go and check the strength of this Taoist solitary cloud," Mr. Song suddenly said at this time. Gong Fanxing was stunned. She didn't expect that his honor would take action so soon. Would it expose their existence too early? "There's no need to be afraid in the battle of the world," Mr. Song said indifferently. "The momentum of fighting for the world should be accumulated from the beginning, until it becomes invincible." "Yes, sir." Gong Fanxing nodded. However, she didn't go up immediately, because Taoist Lone Cloud was going up as a challenger, so she had to wait until Lone Cloud won a battle before she could go up. However, this might cause suspicion of targeting the hermit of Jiayin Mountain. Would Jiayin Mountain feel like they were bullied by others? Finally, the head of the hermit of Jiayin Mountain had chosen his opponent. Just when everyone thought that this hermit would challenge the prince of Undersea City to wash away his shame, Taoist Solitary Cloud said slowly, "100 Calamity Taoist, don't you want to come down and test your Taoist skills with me?" This hermit of the peninsula wanted to challenge the head of Kelowna Taoist. 100 Calamity Taoist. This time, the Tao sects were very fragmented. Basically, with the tacit consent of the authorities, they were almost shamelessly divided into various sections. Of course, other supernatural groups also did the same thing, but they mostly did it in the name of individuals. The concept of sects mostly existed in the countries in the east of the world. If the 100 Tribulations Taoist accepted the challenge, he would only represent Kunlun, not the entire Taoist sect of the Divine Land. Even though the Fire Cloud Evil God had given the 100 Tribulations Taoist a bead from the very beginning. President Solitary Cloud is overconfident. "You don't need to do it. Let me fight for you," a cold-looking Taoist said indifferently. His momentum was rising constantly, which made people feel moved. 100 Calamity Taoist said with a smile, "Solitary Cloud, call me by name. You want to fight for me?" Do you think this old man can't move? Or do you look down on solitary cloud? The Taoist sects in the world are a family, so there's no need to fight. Calm down. 100 Calamity, you're the face of Kelowna Taoist sect. You want to fight anyone who wants to challenge you? Where's the dignity of our Kelowna Taoist sect? At this moment, another voice sounded. However, it was a young man who looked no more than 16 or 17 years old. Miraculously, this young man was floating in the air without a speck of dust on his body. The spiritual chi around him was flowing like a mountain stream, endless but strangely pure. There was even a kind of ethereal and otherworldly aura. On the first day of the meeting of the Supernatural Summit in Kelowna Taoist sect, all the seniors who lived in seclusion on the land of Kelowna came out to pass the heavenly tribulations. Most of the reclusive seniors had perished under the terrifying heavenly tribulation, but there were still a few senior experts who had successfully transcended the heavenly tribulation. This mystical young man was one of the Tao sect seniors who had successfully transcended the heavenly tribulation. He was also a sword immortal who came from an ancient sect, Cheonghua sect. Cheonghua sect belonged to Kunlun since ancient times, and was one of the 8 great sects of ancient Kunlun. 100 Calamity Taoist might be older, but this young man's seniority was higher than his. 100 Calamity Taoist wasn't that kind of person with outstanding talent. He was just good at enduring. Generation after generation of heaven's favorites died, or if he survived, he would have no choice but to become the number 1 in the Taoist sect. However, he didn't know who was stronger compared to the 100 Tribulation sect leader of the several secluded seniors who had successfully passed their tribulations. Martial Uncle Liu, you must be joking. The 100 Tribulations Taoist bowed slightly to the mystical young man and said, "The reputation of Taoism is never based on one person." The 100 Tribulations Taoist was also chosen by many people because of a chance encounter. This battle doesn't represent Kelowna Taoist sect. It's just a test between 100 Calamity and Solitary Cloud. 100 Calamity had some connection with him in the past, and now it's a good time to cut off this connection. Martial Uncle, please don't blame me. It's up to you. The miraculous young man closed his eyes. The pressure in everyone's hearts was suddenly relieved. The heavenly path was broken, and no one knew how powerful these seniors who survived the last heavenly tribulation were, let alone a legendary sword immortal like Martial Uncle Liu. It was said that the Cheonghua faction worshipped the goddess of the 9 heavens, the most authentic goddess of the great Tao, with countless mystical skills and secret skills. Kelowna, in the era before Kelowna Shinryu, was the era of these great Tao. Which sect? Dragon sect, Phoenix sect, God sect, and Devil sect. For the current Taoist sect, they were too far away. So far away that it was like the difference between an ordinary mortal and a land immortal who had survived the last heavenly tribulation. That's right, people like this miraculous young man, who had survived the last heavenly tribulation but couldn't leave because the heavenly path was broken or stayed because of other reasons, were called land immortals. Immortals who walked in the mortal world. After 100 Calamity Taoists sang a call, a small cloud of mist rose up and slowly landed on the martial arts platform. Taoist Solitary Cloud, how have you been? 100 Calamity. At the corner of the stand, Mr. Song's eyes lit up, and then he smiled. This Taoist is really patient. I can see him in any era. Senior Yang, Taizi squinted his eyes again. Who the hell are you? Wolfgang didn't know much about the internal affairs of Kelowna because of the location. Now, the people who had survived the last heavenly tribulation in Kelowna happened after the summit meeting. Before Wolfgang went out for the mission, he only remembered Shinryu, Fire Cloud, Evil God, and Shinyuan Palace in Kelowna. But now, it seemed that new people with great potential were emerging in this magical land of Kelowna because of the spiritual chi. This Kelowna in subworld number 003 is really strange. There are also other subworlds in Kelowna, but there are never so many top experts. What's so strange about it? Wolfgang couldn't help murmuring in his heart. Senior Yang Taizi was more gossipy at this moment, so he asked tentatively, Mr. Song, do you know 100 Calamity? Mr. Song said indifferently. We've met several times, but I don't have the fate of immortals, so I can't enter Taoism's eyes. He really knew Hundred Calamity? Senior Yang Taizi's heart skipped a beat. He didn't doubt Mr. Song's words at all, but he was more curious about his identity. Yang Taizi thought for a while. Mr. Song, do you think Hundred Calamity can win this battle against Taoist Solitary Cloud? Mr. Song glanced at this useless head of Huanjin sect, saying coldly, do you think Hundred Calamity is a guy who is content with the status quo, not thinking about making progress, and is afraid of death because he didn't go through the last heavenly tribulation? I didn't mean that. Yang Taizi was shocked at this moment. Mr. Song's eyes were too frightening. That was the sharpness of a dragon or phoenix among men, the top one should have. Mr. Song suddenly chuckled. Do you know why Hundred Calamity didn't die and live till now? Logically speaking, a guy like him should have used up his lifespan long ago. But he's still alive. Don't you find it strange? It's said that there's a fairyland in Kunlun where there are countless treasures. Yang Taizi thought for a while. Maybe there's a miraculous medicine that can prolong one's life. There's no fairyland in Kunlun, only a bear grave. However, Mr. Song sneered and said, the reason why Bai Jie was able to survive until now and kill so many geniuses was only because this guy was lucky and drank the blood of the undying phoenix when he was young. Undying phoenix. Phoenix blood. Yang Taizi couldn't help exclaiming, Hundred Calamity has become immortal. This was a secret, an unprecedented secret of Kelowna Taoism. Immortal? Mr. Song said disdainfully, no one can live forever. Even the so-called undying phoenix will die one day. Besides, it's just the blood of the undying phoenix. At most, it can only make people live forever. It won't make them immortal. So many years had passed. What phoenix blood? It had already endured 100 tribulations and should have exhausted its lifespan. If this guy doesn't go through the tribulation, he won't live for long. These things were too far away. Yang Taizi only thought that if he lived like Hundred Calamity, an evergreen tree of Taoism, he should have lived long enough, right? At this moment, a horrifying aura suddenly rose from the martial arts platform. This horrifying aura even made Yang Taizi see Mr. Song's expression change. And this horrifying aura came from the head of the hermits in Jiayin Mountain, Taoist Solitary Cloud. What's wrong with this guy? Why did his aura suddenly soar dozens of times? Fire Cloud, evil god, couldn't help standing up. Did this guy also take that drug? Next to him, the true dragon of the divine land frowned. Then his eyes swept back and forth among the 8 grandstands, as if he was looking for something. F***CK. I can refine drugs too. Chichi Kamaya's medical skills should have been squeezed dry by me. Why can't I refine this drug without side effects? Tut! All of a sudden, the true dragon of the divine land's eyes darted around as if he had thought of something. Then he focused his gaze and found Mo Xiaofei, who was hiding in the corner of one of the 8 grandstands. At this moment, Mo Xiaofei was hiding in the team of Greedy Wolf Tribe. Of course, he just came with the team to watch the fight and cheer for Zhuifeng. He had never thought of joining the fight. At this moment, Mo Xiaofei, who was watching the fight, suddenly heard Shinryu of Kelowna's voice in his ear. Master? Don't talk. Listen to me. Nod your head if you understand. Do you understand? Nod. Find a chance to come to the Qian stand to find me. Don't wait, come now. Mo Xiaofei still nodded. He thought, did Master take the wrong medicine today? Why does he feel so fiery? Menopause? Brother, where are you going? This is wonderful. I need to go to the toilet, brother. Your kidney is not good. Chapter 2008. A huge aura shrouded the arena. Obviously, for the transcendents who had reached the limit of this world, Lone Cloud, who had this aura, was already in their sights. The transcendents who knew about the existence of the tear of God couldn't help but feel lucky that they didn't suffer a loss. Although the price of the tear of God was high, it was worth it compared to the effect of 3 bottles of tear of God, even if they knew that they were tricked by Master Rainbow Pansy in this deal. The transcendents who didn't know about the existence of the tear of God couldn't help but be shocked that such a terrifying figure was hiding on that small peninsula. It seemed that they had to pay more attention to the unknown Jiayin Mountain in the future. Although Nangong Do's swordsmanship was good, and his fusion of Taoist techniques and warrior chi was unique, his strength was just so, and he didn't attract the attention of the transcendence of the major forces. The battle between the Prince of the Underwater City and Nangong Do was just an appetizer. Now, the battle between Hundred Tribulation Taoist and Lone Cloud was just the beginning. This time, they could finally see the strength of Hundred Tribulation, the leader of the Kelowna Taoist sect, who is unfathomable. This old Taoist doesn't have any frightening strength. This old man's waist and legs are sore every day, and I don't have many good days left. Hundred Tribulation Taoist shook his head on the arena and looked at Lone Cloud with a smile. Fellow Taoist Lone Cloud, I haven't seen you for 100 years, and your spiritual power has become so profound. Congratulations. There's nothing to be happy about, Lone Cloud said indifferently. If we can't gain a foothold in this conference, I'm afraid Jiayin Mountain won't be able to survive in the future. You're wrong, fellow Taoist Lone Cloud. Now that the spiritual chi is flourishing, it's a great era. The Jialua Mountain is also a blessed place. Since ancient times, the spiritual chi has been abundant. How can it be hard to survive? You know, Lone Cloud said coldly. No matter how flourishing it is, the sky is still so high, and the land is still so wide. There's no water without roots, and there's no spirit chi that comes out of nowhere. It will be used up one day, and you'll have to fight for it again. Fellow Taoist, I'm impressed. The Hundred Tribulations Taoist nodded. In that case, please. Bai Jia, you haven't taken the final step, and neither have I. At this moment, Taoist Lone Cloud directly spread out his hands, and a huge amount of Dharma power began to flow around him. There is no need for us to test each other. I have a magical power here. If you can break it, then I lose. Please. Taoist Master Hundred Tribulations nodded, but his expression was still serious. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky above the martial arts practice platform. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Taoist Solitary Cloud's entire body floated in the air, and his hands grabbed the thunderbolts that struck down from the dark clouds in the sky. The Jialua Mountain lineage mainly cultivated thunder arts, but Taoist Solitary Cloud's thunder arts were like the light of a firefly compared to Nangong Do's. Taoist Lone Cloud waved his hand, and dozens of thick thunderbolts instantly turned into a thunder prison, trapping Taoist Master Hundred Tribulations. In the thunder prison, thunder and lightning were crazily striking everywhere. There were so many thunderbolts that the entire thunder prison was like a huge ball of light, and it was impossible to see what was going on inside. Thunderpool hell. In an instant, 3,600 thunderbolts flashed. Controlling the thunder prison, Taoist Lone Cloud said in a low voice, "This is the highest thunder art of Jialua Mountain. I've integrated everything I've learned into it. Hundred Tribulations, this is our Jialua Mountains." At this moment, the head of the hermits of Jialua Mountain suddenly widened his eyes. The Thunderpool Hell on the martial arts practice platform was instantly torn in half by two huge spiritual energy hands. Inside the Thunder Prison, Hundred Tribulations Taoist Master walked out slowly with his hands covering his ears. Thunder and lightning wrapped around Hundred Tribulations Taoist Master, and in the end, it flowed into the ground like a flood. This thunder is too loud. Even my ears are hard of hearing. Fellow Taoist Lone Cloud, what did you just say? My ears are not good, and I didn't hear it clearly. Can you say it again? For a moment, Taoist Lone Cloud, who was controlling the thunder with both hands, trembled his eyes. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. In the stands, the hermits of Jialua Mountain all stood up with disbelief on their faces. This time, when Solitary Cloud went on stage, he was already going all out. Before going on stage, Solitary Cloud had already drunk 3 bottles of God's Tear, pushing his strength to the peak. He didn't want to end up like the legendary ABA, who didn't even have time to take the medicine, or like Nangong Do, who took the medicine but didn't have enough. Taoist Lone Cloud strategy was simple. He wanted to get 3 pearls for Jiaowa Mountain before the effects of the god's tears wore off. He wanted to use the increased power as a deterrent. And 100 Tribulations Taoist master was the face of Kelowna Taoist sect, which was the source of deterrent for Jiaowa Mountain. After defeating 100 Tribulations Taoist master, Lone Cloud would challenge Kelowna Taoist master's painting of fire clouds and win. Well, that was what they thought. Things should go smoothly. After all, after drinking 3 bottles of God's tears, one's power would increase by 27 times. Did 100 Tribulations by the God's tears as well? Instantly, this thought appeared in the minds of many people who had the God's tears. They couldn't help but feel anxious again. How many bottles of God's tears did this evil, legendary female demon sell? Was she in a wholesale business? At this moment, Taoist Lone Cloud gritted his teeth. The lightning bolts in the sky increased again, and the terrifying lightning bolts gathered in his hands again. At the same time, 2 thunder hell appeared around 100 Tribulations Taoist master again. But this time, there were 2. Just as the 2 thunder pool hells were about to swallow Taoist priest 100 Tribulations, 2 huge palms of spirit energy appeared out of thin air behind him. The palms of spiritual energy grabbed the 2 thunder hell and tightened their grip. Lightning bolts flashed, and the 2 thunder hell were crushed by the palms of spiritual energy. Seeing this, Taoist Lone Cloud's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and roared. Then he raised his left hand, and the lightning bolts in the sky gathered in his left palm. Holding thousands of lightning bolts, Taoist Lone Cloud jumped up and pressed down a lightning ball in his hand. 100 Tribulations Taoist master raised his long eyebrows. When the lightning bolts pressed down, the stone floor of the martial arts arena was shattered by the lightning bolts. The terrifying lightning bolts scattered in all directions and went straight to the spectator stands. Seeing this, Kelowna's Shinryu snorted and waved his hand. A golden wall of spiritual energy appeared directly above the spectator stands in the media area, blocking the lightning bolts. As for the other 7 spectator stands, well, Kelowna's Shinryu didn't make a move. At this moment, all the masters had to make a move. Some were calm, some were serious, and some were gritting their teeth. Taoist Lone Cloud's lightning bolts seemed to be easily crushed by 100 Tribulations Taoist master, but the power was not a joke. The violent lightning continued for more than 10 breaths before stopping. When the lightning disappeared, a terrifying crater had already appeared on the entire martial arts stage. The crater was so deep that it reached the edge of the martial arts stage. It was frighteningly deep. However, 100 Tribulations Taoist Lone Cloud and Taoist 100 Tribulations Taoist master were not in the hole. They had disappeared. Look, Lone Cloud is over there outside the arena. Looking towards the source of the sound, he saw that Gaoyang Mountain's Taoist solitary cloud had already flown out of the arena. His entire body was pressed into the ground, and there was a huge palm print around him. He didn't move, probably because he had temporarily lost consciousness. At this moment, 100 Tribulations Taoist master's figure finally appeared in everyone's sight. 100 Tribulations Taoist master was floating lightly above the arena. He had his hands behind his back hunched, and his expression was kind. Kunlun wins this round. As the referee of the competition, Kelowna's Shinryu announced loudly. Then she waved her hand, and the last bead of Mount Jia-yin flew out from the hands of one of the hermits. Seeing that the last bead was about to be taken away, the hermit roared angrily and actually reached out to grab the bead tightly. Are the people of Mount Jia-yin all so shameless? Shinryu, who was already in a bad mood, said coldly, "Can you people be any more shameless?" This competition was broadcasted to the world, and Kelowna's merciless rebuke and the behavior of the hermit from Mount Jia-yin were all seen by the world, especially Kelowna Shinryu's rebuke, which was a personal attack. The hermit who held the bead tightly spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale, but the bead still flew out and shot towards 100 Tribulations Taoist master. Longshaw said impatiently, Don't fix the arena. Let's just fight like this. How long do we have to fix it every round? Next, Kelowna Shinryu went back to her seat. Kelowna thought she would sit down, but for some reason, Shinryu walked into the tunnel leading to the stands. Lord Long, where are you going? Fire Cloud, evil god, asked hurriedly. Why did this guy run out again after sitting for a short while? Is he so busy? Can I go to the bathroom? Do you want me to go with you? Take care. Then, under everyone's gaze, a hermit from Mount Jiayin quietly dug out Taoist Lone Cloud, who was beside the arena, and brought him back to their seats. Nangong Do was still unconscious, and Taoist Lone Cloud was also unconscious. The remaining hermits of Mount Jiayin lost their backbone, and their morale fell to the bottom. However, they didn't choose to leave at this time. The rules of the competition were that as long as there were still challengers, the competition wouldn't end. Maybe they still had a chance. This time, Taoist Lone Cloud bought 5 bottles of Tears of God. Now, there was only 1 bottle left. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master had also returned to the seats of the Tao Association. A few Taoist elders stood up at the same time to welcome him. However, Song Howard wasn't here. Even Princess Chu Yang had left her seat at some point in time. The mysterious young man, surnamed Liu from the Cheonghua faction, also opened his eyes. After taking a deep look at 100 Tribulations Taoist Master, he closed his eyes and continued to meditate. President, thank you for your hard work. This battle has broken the morale of Mount Jiayin. Kelowna is the Orthodox Tao Association, and I think these overseas cultivators won't dare to say they're the Orthodox Tao Association anymore. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master shook his head slightly and sat down slowly while massaging his shoulders. If more monsters like Taoist Lone Cloud come, I'm afraid my old bones will break. Everyone was surprised, and they didn't know why President 100 Tribulations Taoist Master suddenly said that. Maybe he was being modest. However, 100 Tribulations Taoist Master didn't say anything more. He just said indifferently, Kunlun, 1 bead is enough. The rest of you will have to work harder to let this old man take a breather. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master originally had 1 bead, but he said so, which meant that the bead he originally had belonged to the Tao Association, not Kunlun. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master obviously knew what the old Fire Cloud evil god was scheming, and he was good at it. Everyone knew that, so they didn't say anything. At this time, 100 Tribulations Taoist Master returned victorious, and the Tao Association of Kelowna was full of vigor. One of the Tao Association's Taoist Master, Shinryu Taoist Master Returned Sun, held the 7-star sword, stepped on the wind, and stood in the air above the stage that had become a deep pit. You will be the one. Please come up to the stage and accept the challenge. Taoist Returned Sun pointed his sword at a handsome man who was wearing a Yin-Yang Taoist robe and holding a jade token. He was a Yin-Yang master from an overseas island with a history of thousands of years. That guy Returned Sun, 100 Tribulations Taoist Master, suddenly sighed and shook his head. But at this time, the voice of the mysterious young man from the Cheonghua sect suddenly rang in 100 Tribulations Taoist Master's ears. 100 Tribulations, you just said that solitary cloud of Mount Jialuo is only a monster with strength. What do you mean? Can't Martial Uncle Liu see it? 100 Tribulations Taoist Master replied in his mind. The mysterious young man said indifferently, There's a faint layer of blue light on Lone Cloud's body, which prevents me from using my divine sense to scan him. Since you have fought with him, you should be aware of this. It's nothing. 100 Tribulations Taoist Master laughed and said, A monster with strength is just a monster with strength. But as the saying goes, a strong man can defeat 10 skilled men. Even if it's just a monster with strength, once there are enough of them, they can beat the master to death. Don't you think so, Martial Uncle Liu? The mysterious young man thought for a while and suddenly said, If I challenge Shinryu Taoist Master, what are my chances of winning? 100 Tribulations Taoist Master slowly raised a finger at this time. The mysterious young man frowned. Only 10%? 100 Tribulations Taoist Master said, Martial Uncle, Did you block your brain, or the heavenly tribulation make you stupid? I don't mean I have no chance at all, okay? It's just a tribulation. Why are you so arrogant? You talk as if no one has passed the tribulation. 100 tribulations, you humph. The mysterious young man snorted. I don't want to argue with a junior. The mysterious young man didn't say anything this time. At the same time, the young master who was challenged by Immortal Return's son also slowly got up and left his seat. This handsome young master summoned a snow-white demon fox and sat directly on the demon fox's body, while the demon fox walked on air, in the corridor of the Qian grandstand. Master, why did you call me here in such a hurry? Is there anything urgent? Mo Xiaofei asked quickly at this time. Here. At this time, Kelowna's Shinryu directly grabbed Mo Xiaofei's hand and stuffed a bottle into it. What's this? Don't ask. Kelowna's Shinryu directly said at this time. Later, you'll pretend to be from the Greedy Wolf clan and fight on the stage. I'll tell you who you want to fight later. But before that, you'd better drink the thing inside. Okay, since Master asked, I'll fight on the stage. Mo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. But this bottle, what's inside? It's used to nourish the kidney. Kelowna's Shinryu directly said, vigorous pill. I don't believe that this Shinryu-S version of blood essence concentrate can't be compared to that rubbish tear of God. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 2009. In order to make it easier to walk, a temporary tunnel was dug between the stands, although he didn't know what it meant. To make it more convenient to move from one spectator stand to another without being seen by others, and so on. Mo Xiaofei returned to the stand where the Greedy Wolf tribe was with doubts, holding the so-called strength pill given to him by Kelowna Shinryu. But what was in the bottle was clearly golden and sticky. It was like gold paint. Wouldn't he have diarrhea if he drank it? Brother, you're back. When Mo Xiaofei appeared, Zhuifeng was always the first to react. It was just that the Greedy Wolf tribe, including Zixing, were staring at the stage at this time. What the hell? At this time, Mo Xiaofei also subconsciously looked at the stage. He remembered that when he was looking for his master, it happened that Taoist Lone Cloud was defeated by Taoist by Jie of Taoism. After a while, another senior of Taoism came to challenge him. It didn't take long for him to come back from the Qian stand. However, at this time, on the martial arts practice field, Taoist Master Huan Yang of Taoism had fallen outside the martial arts practice field. His face was pale as if he had been seriously injured, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Immortal Huan Yang lost. Zixing solemnly responded to Mo Xiaofei's doubts at this time, in less than 3 moves. 3 moves? Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but open his mouth, his face full of disbelief. Kelowna Shinryu, as the referee, said directly at this time in a flat voice, Young Master Qing Ming wins this round. Many people had not even figured out how Immortal Huan Yang had lost the battle. This senior of Taoist sect stepped on the 7-star sword and formed a powerful 7-star sword formation, which was full of various Taoist magic arts of the 5 elements. Seeing that the Young Master was trapped in the sword formation and had no way out, suddenly, the 7-star sword formation controlled by Immortal Huan Yang seemed to collapse. Soon after, Taoist Master Return's son violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and then his body directly fell out of the arena. Until now, the Onmyoji was still sitting on the white fox that he had summoned, not moving at all. In this way, including the 2 pearls he obtained in the competition, this devilishly handsome Yang Master now had 3 full pearls. However, for this conference, Japan also split up its own delegation, and it was unified. Everyone represented their region in their own name. However, most of these individuals were severely injured in the previous round of direct competition. Not to mention the challenge round. There were only a few who could stand up now. Pure numbers were meaningless against top-notch transcendence. The essence of the Power Conference was gradually revealed as well. It was a competition of the number of top-level transcendents, and the beads that represented the council would eventually fall into the hands of those top-level transcendents. Guild leader, I'm sorry. I lost. After Sage Huan Yang returned to the Tao Association's side, his face was pale. Although he wasn't flustered and exasperated, it was obvious that he was unwilling to accept the result. Taoist Master Hunter Tribulations was thinking about something at this moment, and he didn't say anything. Another Tao sect elder frowned and said, "Return to Sun. Your 7 stars array formation has both offense and defense. It's something you've been playing with for hundreds of years. Why did the array collapse just like that?" Sage Huanyang frowned and recalled at this moment, "I suspect that this Yin-Yang master has the means to directly attack one's divine sense. On the martial arts stage, I only felt that my spirit was suddenly severely injured, and my divine sense was like being hit by countless sledgehammers. In an instant, my consciousness was emptied, and then the formation collapsed. Fellow Taoists, this Yin-Yang master's means are evil. You must be careful. If it's a means to attack divine sense, then let me do it." A Taoist elder said in a deep voice, "Huan Yang's failure is not a fault, but a sinister means. Since ancient times, our sect has kept a secret treasure specially used to protect divine sense. It's just right to deal with it." However, Taoist Master Hunter Tribulation said indifferently at this moment, "Fellow Taoists, the Tao Association has fought 2 rounds in a row and lost once in a lifetime. The result is not bad. Why don't we take a break for a while?" "Guild leader? I'm just giving a suggestion." Taoist Master Hunter Tribulations said with a smile, "It doesn't matter if you don't agree with my suggestion. After all, I don't look like a dictator." Sage Huanyang said in a low voice, "I agree with the guild leader's suggestion. This Yin-Yang master's means are weird. We better make a plan before acting. I've already lost. If I suffer another loss, I'm afraid it will really damage the reputation of the Kelowna Taoist sect." Since Vice Guild Leader Huanyang also said so, Taoist Master Hunter Tribulations didn't have the final say in the association. But this long-lived guild leader had accumulated prestige for countless years. As the saying goes, the Taoist Master Hunter Tribulations is made of iron. The handsome Yin-Yang master was still riding the white fox above the martial arts stage. He was playing with the bead he got from winning the challenge, as if he was waiting for the next challenger. But after a while, no one came up to the martial arts stage. The handsome Yin-Yang master patted the white fox's head gently, indicating it to go back. But at this moment, there was a strange sound. It seemed that there was some movement on the martial arts stage. The Yin-Yang master, who had already turned around, looked in the direction of the sound. He saw a white-haired man holding a bamboo staff and wearing round sunglasses standing in a corner of the arena. He didn't know when this white-haired man had appeared. "You want to challenge me?" Yin-Yang master Saimai asked slowly after a moment of silence. The white-haired guy on the stage took off his sunglasses and hung them on his collar, smiling casually. "I'm Momo, the successor of the Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. I want to ask you for some spells to ward off ghosts and evil spirits. It doesn't matter if you have a bead or not, since I don't have one. If I win, I can take the bead, but if you win, you won't get anything. Instead, you'll waste your energy. Let's just give each other some pointers." He didn't want the bead, but only wanted some pointers? Uproar. Undoubtedly, this was a world where looks were important, in various senses. This Yin-Yang master was handsome. Riding a white tiger, he was graceful and graceful. He had already displayed the feminine side of a man to the extreme. In the current generation of stinky young girls, looks were justice. This handsome Yin-Yang master's popularity skyrocketed, even becoming the new husband of many girls. On the contrary, this guy who called himself the Taoist master was sloppy like a vagrant, his face full of hardships. He didn't look old, but his hair was gray. He didn't want a bead, but only wanted some pointers. Did he come here to gain some popularity? He must be here to scam, right? He made it sound so nice, but in fact, he didn't want to win at all. He just wanted to gain some attention and then turn it into money. Ordinary people thought so, and quite a few of them. But those present were all transcendents, at least, except for the media. They all had transcendence. They had different opinions about Momo. This guy, when did he go up? Why didn't he do anything? Chien stage. Firecloud, evil god said with interest. "This Momo, I met him once at Mount Tai. I didn't expect such a guy to be hidden among the juniors of Kelowna Taoism. He's quite something. Momo isn't as simple as you think. At this time, the true dragon of the divine land said indifferently, "This guy's state of mind is already there. Although his dharma power is a little weak, the fruit of the way is something that he can easily get. Dharma power and dharma power are dispensable to him." Fire Cloud, evil god, couldn't help but frown. He was a martial artist, so he couldn't see through this kind of Taoist. But he had an intuition that Momo wasn't simple. "Lord Long, you mean if you hear the Tao in the morning, you can die in the evening? You're the one who's dead. Can't you see he's alive and well?" Kelowna's Shinryu spat. Fire Cloud, evil god, didn't say anything. He thought it was a mistake to take the 3 beads for convenience's sake. He should have taken no beads, and then went up to the stage to find a guy to beat up when he was annoyed. Come and take care of this temperamental old woman. Heavens, Taoism has a descendant. The 100 Tribulations Taoist master was more reserved and didn't say anything else after his sudden remark. As for Cheonghua Sek's young man, surnamed Liu, who had just passed the heavenly tribulation, he showed a hint of surprise. Then he nodded slightly, but then shook his head. It's a pity that he's from the Celestial Master's sect, so he's not fated to become an immortal. But he's an anomaly. Dragon Tiger Mount, Zhang Dowling's orthodoxy? Mr. Song's eyes brightened. It seems that most of Farrell's concentration talisman came from this guy. Good. Kelowna is indeed a land of talents and heroes. It's better this way. The more prosperous it is, the more powerful the dragon vein will be. Senior Yang Taizi didn't say anything, but frowned at Momo. Momo was here, so was his apprentice. Yang Taizi couldn't help looking around the stands. I knew it, he's going to fight. Farrell showed a faint smile. Mr. Gareth and the other households next to him thought that they had seen wrongly. This alloy straight man actually knows how to laugh. Mr. Farrell, do you know this weird guy? Farrell said indifferently. Go prepare. Next time, no matter who wins, you'll take over the challenge. Mr. Gareth couldn't help but tremble. His infusion hadn't been completed yet. At this moment, Lancelot returned. She looked completely new and even returned to her deacon outfit. She was carrying a long box in her hand. Naturally, the ritual sword Catanat was inside. Gareth, the Queen's secret order. I'll participate in the fight. You arrange it. Lancelot said directly. Mr. Gareth looked at the bottle of Fordrip that still had more than half left. He looked at Farrell and then at Lancelot. What's wrong? Lancelot asked directly. Nothing. Watch the fight. Watch the fight first. Mr. Gareth hurriedly said. Arrange it. Bamboo stick, dirty cloth shoes, and a smile. Suddenly, in the eyes of the world, this sloppy guy didn't seem to be as dirty as they imagined. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his face was clean, and so were his eyes. With the passage of time, one's perception of this heavenly master of Longhu Mountain seemed to be changing little by little in a positive direction. He was actually quite good-looking, although his face was full of hardships. It was also a sign of maturity, right? Did you notice that this Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain might be a natural clothes hanger? His body proportion was too good, wasn't it? His smile seemed to have some kind of magical power. At least, it looked very comfortable. At this time, the yin-yang master sitting on the white fox steered the white fox to descend a little. He looked at Momo and said slowly, There are rules in the challenge competition, no matter what your intention is. I've heard of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Some rumors. Momo smiled and said, Actually, it's not that magical. The handsome yin-yang master nodded and said seriously, Please enlighten me. You too. Momo waved the bamboo stick in his hand. You first. At this moment, a voice came from the Tao Association. It was unknown who it was, but it was heard like this. Little friend Momo, be careful. This yin-yang master has a mysterious technique that specializes in attacking one's divine sense. The handsome yin-yang master just casually glanced at the Tao Association's direction and didn't say anything. Momo shrugged and said, Why don't I pretend I didn't hear it? No need. The yin-yang master said indifferently. It's not a secret. Besides, it's not a mysterious technique that specializes in attacking one's divine sense. Suddenly, Momo turned around and took something. It was unknown what he wanted to do, but it seemed like he took something out from beside him. It seemed to be something very fierce. Momo clamped the bamboo stick under his armpit and grabbed something with both hands, something that was struggling. What's that? Looking carefully, one could see that the air around Momo's hands was twisting. After a while, the twisting thing gradually showed its original shape. It was a flying serpent with a pair of wings on its ribs. At this moment, the flying snake kept twisting and struggling in Momo's hands, but couldn't break free no matter how hard it tried. And this little Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain seemed to have touched a huge eel, saying happily, "What a big snake! It's enough to eat for several days." The flying snake suddenly hissed strangely, and its whole body emitted a gray-white flame. It seemed to be scalding, so the little Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain loosened his hands instantly. It flew away. Momo couldn't help but shout with pity, "The snake's gall is very nutritious. Don't go." And this flying snake immediately flew to the side of the yin-yang master, baring its fangs at Momo, looking extremely ferocious. "This is Soaring Snake." The yin-yang master stretched out his hand, and the flying snake instantly coiled around his arm, finally lifting out from his shoulder. "It's one of the 12 immortal generals I've subdued." Momo said, "They're called immortal generals. They have evil spirits. I've always said that the immortal position is the 3 evils position, very evil. I also have some little guys here. They're not immortal generals, but some little ghosts I've just raised." While speaking, Momo took out a shabby small yellow cloth bag, patting it with a bamboo stick. Like herding a sheep, a wisp of gray-white fog was patted out of the bag. The fog rushed out, and in a split second, the arena was filled with chilly wind and the wailing of evil ghosts. Finally, the fog gradually took shape, and it turned out to be the shadow of a young man. This young man's face was pale, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes were dull, but he gave people an extremely creepy feeling. This guy died in vain. I picked him up in the suburbs a few days ago. I took him in because he was pitiful. The little Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain said casually, "Oh, right, there's a plane wreckage at the place where I picked him up." Fire Cloud, evil god, suddenly stood up, saying in a low voice, "This is Gongsun Shiyu." A long time ago, Gongsun Shiyu and the White Tiger Clan leader tried to cause trouble at the summit, but their plan failed because of Boss Luo's appearance, and they were killed. He was supposed to be secretly transported back to the headquarters of the administration of Shenzhou, but the plane was attacked during the transport and exploded in the sky. After that, the administration only found Gongsun Shiyu's body that was shattered by the explosion. The administration originally planned to use the method of soul summoning to capture Gongsun Shiyu's 3 souls and 7 spirits, so that they could ask about what happened, but in the end, they couldn't find Gongsun Shiyu's soul either. I didn't expect it was taken away by the little Taoist master. Fire Cloud, evil god, couldn't help but have a strange expression. This Momo, don't tell me he wants to use Gongsun Shiyu's soul to fight. He didn't know what the Xinyuan Palace was thinking. Fire Cloud, evil god, subconsciously looked at the place where Chichi Kamayo was standing. The old tortoise and his entourage had been silent the whole time, keeping a very low profile. Now, seeing the appearance of Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, this group of people from the Xinyuan Palace, this group of people was actually eating lunch? Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS1. Thank you, Boss Wudong, for making Miss Yi cute again. She's about to debut. PS2. We're an old married couple, so we don't need to say anything. Equals PS3. Chapter 2010. Gue Chinny, who was eating a sausage with chopped flowers, raised his head and showed a genial smile, as if he felt Fire Cloud, evil god's gaze. "Why are you smiling?" Fire Cloud, evil god, rolled his eyes. "This old tortoise is so careless, as if nothing has happened. Is this the innate skill of a cowardly tortoise?" He didn't have time to discuss this with Chichi Kamaya. Momo summoned Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul from the martial arts arena, looking as if he was going to fight with this thing. Since this was the conference, Fire Cloud, evil god, couldn't stop him directly. He had to wait until after the conference, or after this challenge, to see if he could discuss this matter with Momo. The world didn't know who Gongsun Shiyu was. Because when Gongsun Shiyu and the acting leader of White Tiger conspired to disrupt the summit meeting, Firecloud, Evil God, ordered the global live broadcast to be cut off for a period of time. If Boss Luo hadn't restarted the live broadcast and announced the iron law of the City of Abstinence to the world, the live broadcast wouldn't have been restarted for the next day. Therefore, when Momo called out Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul, the audience in front of the screen only felt that this ghost was a little creepy. But this ghost should be quite good-looking after being cleaned up. On the martial arts arena, the handsome Yin-Yang master sized up Gongsun Shiyu's ghost and suddenly said, "This ghost soul seems to be incomplete. You have a good eye." Momo smiled. "I don't know if this guy was born with a defect or it was too late when I found him. He's missing one soul and two souls, leaving him with this silly look." The Yin-Yang master nodded, but the flying snake on his body. The flying snake disappeared again at this moment. At this time, Transcendent had already guessed that the reason why immortal Huanyang lost so bizarrely in the last round was probably because of this flying snake that would suddenly disappear. It was said that Soaring Snake was a creature that could swim in space cracks. Its attacks were strange and varied, making it hard to defend against. However, the instant Soaring Serpent disappeared, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, who had been summoned from the martial arts stage, suddenly moved. Gongsun Shiyu waved his right hand and pulled hard, as if he was pulling something out of the air. Gongsun Shiyu grabbed the neck of Soaring Serpent and pulled it out of the space crack. His dull face turned ferocious and bloodthirsty. Seeing this, the beautiful Yin-Yang master frowned. He doesn't seem to be completely demented. Momo smiled. Usually it's dummy, but if he's stimulated, he'll have some reaction. Maybe it's his primitive instinct. Interesting. The beautiful Yin-Yang master held a talisman between her slender fingers and placed it in front of her face. She was softly chanting something. In an instant, the Soaring Serpent, whose neck was gripped by Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, lit up with grayish-white flames again. The Soaring Serpent hissed and struggled free from Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. When the gray-white flames died out, a thin young man with fiery red hair appeared on the martial arts stage. This young man seemed to be the incarnation of Soaring Serpent. At this moment, a powerful force was rising from the young man's body. At the same time, the various clan leaders of the Demon Clan Alliance all frowned, because they were very familiar with this power. Demon power. It was definitely the demon power of a big demon. Is this Soaring Serpent of the same origin as the Soaring Serpent in the mountain sea of Kelowna? They couldn't help but have such a question. Besides, a distant memory gradually became clear in their hearts. Legend has it that the Soaring Serpent was a divine beast, and it was ranked below the four symbols. But in an instant, the Soaring Serpent, who had just burst out with demon power, welcomed the palm of Gongsun Shiyu's ghost. This palm was so fast that it seemed to exceed the Soaring Serpent's reaction speed, and it directly landed on the Soaring Serpent's chest. The Soaring Serpent's body flew backward instantly, and it was about to fly out of the martial arts stage. However, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost attacked again, flashing behind the Soaring Serpent and hitting it back again. The Soaring Serpent was like a rubber ball, bouncing around the martial arts stage under Gongsun Shiyu's ghost as punches and kicks. At this moment, the ferocious expression on Gongsun Shiyu's ghost's face became denser and denser. He had completely turned into an evil ghost. In the distance, the new Grand Duke of the 13 Families looked at Gongsun Shiyu's ghost on the martial arts stage and suddenly chuckled, muttering to himself, "I wonder if that guy's son is feeling as if he ate a dead rat now." Grand Duke, Firecloud, Evil God, didn't give us any beads at the beginning. Are we just going to watch like this? Don't worry. Balegan smiled casually, but he directly threw a bell at the vampire who spoke and suddenly laughed. "How about using this to challenge?" "You mean challenge Firecloud, Evil God?" The vampire couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. "Using that terrifying warrior, Knight?" "Up to you," Balegan said indifferently. "But from a certain point of view, this will be a good show with a predestined meaning. This script should be written by Kaloya, The vampire subconsciously looked at the bell in his hand, and then looked at the passage behind the seat. In the darkness of the passage, there was a terrifying monster with steel needles all over its body, sitting there. It seemed that compared to last night, the shell on this monster's body had increased a little, and it was darker in color. Rubber ball, soaring serpent. S figure was still bouncing around the martial arts stage, facing Gong Sun Shiyu's ghost. It had no power to resist. The handsome yin-yang master couldn't help but show a dignified expression on his face. He slowly exhaled, saying softly, Kelowna, worthy of being a terrifying land. Even without Shinryu, there are still many capable people. Brother, you didn't try your best either. Momo looked up and said, You accepted the 12 divine generals, but you only shouted out one. The handsome yin-yang master shook his head. The 12 divine generals were subdued by my ancestor. After my ancestor left, the 12 divine generals were automatically sealed. For thousands of years, no one in the family could completely unlock their seals. As for me, I only unlocked the seals of 5 divine generals. Momo patted the shabby cloth bag in his hand. Actually, only this silly one in my hand is relatively powerful. The other little ghosts are real ghosts, ordinary people who died in vain. The handsome yin-yang master smiled. This smile was so beautiful, like a peerless beauty, making it hard to distinguish whether he was male or female. Now, I think it doesn't matter if I'm a bead or not. The handsome yin-yang master said softly. To be able to meet Mr. M.O. at this conference is actually a joyous occasion. I will give you my greatest respect. Momo took a deep breath, waving his hand. The raging Gong Sun Shiyu waved his hands like a wild beast, as if he was restrained by something, but he was pulled back to Momo's side. At the same time, the yin-yang master took out another talisman, a talisman with black and gold characters, shooting it out. The golden and black characters instantly split into 4, and at the same time, 4 figures rushed out from the 4 split talismans. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Goat Zhun, Tai Shang. The 4 divine generals stood on the 4 corners of the martial arts practice platform. At the same time, Soaring Serpent soared into the sky and stood in the center of the martial arts practice platform. The yin-yang master was standing on the back of the white fox, holding an ancient sword in his hand. Beside him, it was a circular mirror and a piece of green jade that revolved around him. Instantly, 4 huge demonic forces, no weaker than Soaring Serpent, erupted from the 4 corners of the martial arts stage. These 4 divine generals all had the demonic force of a big demon. Together with the power of the Soaring Serpent, they formed a gigantic Mandara wheel of light that could cover the entire martial arts practice platform. The yin-yang master pointed his ancient sword forward, and the huge devil's snare halo spun instantly. Then, it stopped, and a bead in the devil's snare halo released a huge light beam that shot toward Gong Sun Shiyu's ghost. At this time, the evil spirit roared, waved its fist, and directly faced the light beam. Boom! The shockwaves created by the fist and the light beam flattened the remaining part of the martial arts stage and spread to the 8 grandstands. Seeing this, the true dragon of China frowned and had no choice but to set up a golden wall. Xiaoxi felt that she had suffered a loss. Even if she had a power bank, it shouldn't be used like this. She felt that she had been tricked by Fire Cloud, Evil God. Each of these transcendents could destroy a city. How tiring would it be to protect them? At this moment, Gong Sun Shiyu's ghost was in a stalemate with the huge light beam. However, the devil's snare halo started to spin again under the yin-yang master's control. The power of the light pillar increased in an instant. Gong Sun Shiyu's ghost seemed to be at a disadvantage and was slowly being suppressed. After all, he had lost his physical body and was only a remnant soul. Although he could survive with the help of the Heavenly Master Sect's Taoist spells, he was still a far cry from when he was alive. Sword! Give me the sword! Give me the sword! Gong Sun Shiyu's ghost roared, and he kept shouting sword. He even reached out his hand toward the ground as if he wanted to grab something. Give me the sword! Gong Sun Shiyu's ghost was about to fall into the huge pit in the arena under the pressure of the light beam. I don't have a sword, but I have a bamboo stick. You can use it if you don't mind, Momo suddenly said. Then he bit his finger and wiped the bamboo stick before throwing it out. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost caught the bamboo stick with one hand. Sword! Gongsun Shiyu's ghost yelled and pointed with his sword. Then he turned into a dark golden dragon and crashed into the light beam of the devil's snare halo. The dark golden dragon went against the flow, breaking the light beam 1 foot at a time, and finally reached the devil's snare halo. The 5 divine generals had serious expressions on their faces as they once again unleashed their demonic energy. However, the dark golden dragon was like a big fish trying to break through a fishing net. It actually caused the entire devil's snare wheel to cave in. In the distant stands, Mr. Song frowned and said in a low voice, "Son of Heaven's swordsmanship, the 8th move, Golden Dragon's fury, shocks the heavens and earth? This ghost, what the hell?" The light and shadow flashed on people's faces. The ones who were stunned were the humans in front of the screen. The horror of the supernatural power, even through the screen, shocked people's hearts. The powerful power of this creature was awakening some instincts in people's bodies. It seemed to gradually turn into a hot current. Unconsciously, it made people fear and crave power. On the ground, Momo raised his head and made a hand gesture. He was sitting cross-legged above the huge pit, chanting something. Then, a solemn treasure image appeared behind him. In a split second, the bamboo stick in Gongsun Shiyu's ghost hand shone brightly, like a needle piercing a balloon. When the devil's snare halo was finally broken, the entire halo was shattered. The 5 immortal generals spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The dark golden dragon soared into the sky above the martial arts stage. The yin-yang master stood on the white fox, still surrounded by the bronze mirror and magatama. But he held the sword and drove the white fox to hack at the dark golden dragon. When the ancient sword collided with the bamboo stick in Gongsun Shiyu's ghost hand, the bamboo stick couldn't withstand the huge force and exploded. Meanwhile, the round mirror beside the yin-yang master shot out a beam of light. Under the light, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost suffered great pain. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost body emitted terrifying green smoke, but he still held on crazily and fiercely. His ferocious expression was terrifying. However, under the light of the round mirror, Gongsun Shiyu's ghost figure began to melt. Then, the yin-yang master waved the ancient sword, cutting off one of Gongsun Shiyu's ghost arm. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost screamed and fell from the sky. At this moment, the handsome yin-yang master came over on the white fox, pointing the tip of the ancient sword at Momo's chest. Momo, who was sitting cross-legged in the air, suddenly opened his eyes and pushed out his hand seals. Demon Seal. Everyone could hear the words Demon Seal. At the same time, a huge amount of spiritual energy gathered crazily in the sky, drawing a huge golden imperial edict. The imperial edict descended at a speed faster than the yin-yang master's. The imperial edict passed through the yin-yang master's body and sank into the ground. Instantly, the ancient sword in the yin-yang master's hand lost its radiance. The round mirror lost its luster, and the magatama stopped spinning. Even the yin-yang master's spiritual energy fell silent. As for the 5 godly generals who were also passed through by the imperial edict, they also lost their demonic energy and fell to the ground. All of this made people feel like they were in the Forbidden City, except that the Forbidden City sealed a huge city, while the Demon Seal here was only the size of a martial arts arena. However, this little celestial master of Mount Longhu made people unconsciously fearful. The target of his devil sealing was a powerful yin-yang master, his divine general, and the 3 extraordinary treasures in his hands. Was the heavenly master sect of Dragon Tiger Mountain so powerful? The yin-yang master who lost all his power could only fall helplessly. Seeing that he was about to fall into the deep pit, Momo jumped up and held this handsome yin-yang master firmly. The yin-yang master didn't show any fear. Instead, he looked astonished. Momo lowered his head and smiled at him, then said softly, "You lost." The yin-yang master was startled and felt his body fall again. But this time, the fall ended very soon. He had fallen onto the flat ground outside the arena. Of course, it was more like Momo had carried him out of the arena. This guy's body feels so soft. Momo suddenly muttered to himself. Momo shook his head and waved his hand. The imperial edict that was shaken into the ground instantly shattered, turning into specks of golden light and dissipating. At the same time, the yin-yang master's lost power became active again. The ancient sword, round mirror, and Magatama glowed again. As for the 5 godly generals, they stood up one after another. At this moment, the handsome yin-yang master got up with a sullen face, wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. It's just a competition, not a battle of life and death. Let's just do something. Momo smiled casually. Besides, I'm out of mana. After saying that, the young celestial master of Mount Longhu sat down on the ground, looking exhausted. Let's not talk about the final demon's sealing edict. Let's just talk about Gongsun Shiyu's ghost, a ghost, and an incomplete one at that. It was this little heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain who had been supporting him with his mana. This was a warrior who lacked mana. Chapter 2011. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost turned back into a gray mist and seemed to be unwilling to accept the result, but it was put into the shabby cloth bag in the end. At the same time, a bead flew in front of Momo. However, this young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain didn't take it. He just flicked his hand and sent the bead back to the yin-yang master. A loss is a loss. Since I'm not as good as you, I have no excuse to stay. This handsome yin-yang master was very honest and even shook his head. The young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain was more honest than him. This thing is troublesome. I can't keep it even if I take it now. I already said that I don't have any power. If the next person challenges me, I can only give it up. The yin-yang master frowned. Momo chuckled. You don't want the things you've worked so hard for to end up in someone else's hands, do you? In that case, I'll keep it until you recover your power. Momo shook his head casually. He didn't say yes or no. He just stretched his back and slowly walked to the stand. They looked at this young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain and felt that Momo was indeed very weak, as if he really didn't have the ability to fight anymore. But the yin-yang master was different. His magic power was still very strong. 5 divine servants, 3 powerful items, and that peerless devil's snare halo. The young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain didn't have the power to fight anymore. But this yin-yang master could obviously last for a long time. Most of the transcendents didn't want to attack this yin-yang master, especially those who had the tier of God, because they found that this yin-yang master didn't show any signs of using the tier of God. Maybe this yin-yang master didn't meet the legendary witch, so he didn't have the tier of God. But what if he had the tier of God, but didn't use it? There were plenty of soft persimmons. Why pick this hard bone? The martial arts stage finally started to be repaired again. Under the eyes of Kelowna Shinryu, a group of people from the administration went up in fear. This was actually Fire Cloud, Evil God's intention. After all, there wasn't even a single corner of the martial arts stage. It was just a huge pit. Not only was it unsightly, it was also impractical. Long Shuo didn't say anything, but Fire Cloud Evil God left his seat at this time. Long Shuo knew that this old man deliberately let people repair the martial arts stage in order to free up some time. He went to find Momo, because Momo had Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul. Momo returned to his seat under the gazes of the Dao cultivators. Some were shocked, some were scared, some were confused, and some were resentful, probably because Momo didn't take the yin-yang master's bead. The human heart. The little heavenly master of Mount Longhu frowned and shook his head. Then, he turned around and walked toward another spectator stand. However, a man wearing a white training suit was standing at the entrance of the spectator stand. He looked at Momo, but didn't say anything. Momo understood his meaning and walked over. The man in the white training garb was naturally the Fire Cloud Evil God, an old man who was also disliked by many of the Dao sects and demons of the Divine Prefecture. Don't mind their short-sighted eyes. Fire Cloud Evil God said with a faint smile when Momo arrived. When I was young, many of them looked at me like that, but they only dared to do it behind my back. Momo blinked, thinking for a while. You mean they're afraid of you because you're good at fighting? Fire Cloud, evil god, said indifferently. It's not that I'm good at fighting, it's that I dare to fight. Momo shook his head, saying casually, I don't fight, I catch ghosts. That's why I came to you. Fire Cloud, evil god, said directly. I hope you can take out Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul temporarily, and I hope you can help us with the investigation. It's about the plane crash that escorted Gongsun Shiyu. Momo said in surprise. I told you, I only saw the wreckage when I got there. As for Gongsun Shiyu, you saw it too. He's in a daze and I couldn't get anything out of him. Besides, don't you know how to open the black box of the plane to check the data? You've used too much extraordinary power and forgot about the normal means. Fire Cloud, evil god, shook his head. Of course it wasn't that simple. Didn't this little heaven master know that Gongsun Shiyu's remnant soul was a hot potato? Xinyuan Palace hadn't said anything yet, but once it did, it would become a serious matter. But at this moment, Momo took out a cloth bag and took out a blank paper talisman. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost flew out of the cloth bag and was caught by Momo, rubbing it together with a blank paper talisman. Then, Momo threw a talisman ball at Fire Cloud, evil god, which was full of incantations. What are you doing? Fire Cloud, evil god frowned subconsciously. Momo shrugged. This guy died a wrongful death and his resentment is very strong. If left alone, he'll become a deadly thing sooner or later. I was going to release his soul from purgatory, and I happened to have a competition with someone, so I used it temporarily. If your administration needs it, you could take it back. Anyway, you don't lack the means to release souls from purgatory. Fire Cloud, evil god, held the talisman ball in his hand. Gongsun Shiyu's ghost was restless inside. The talisman ball kept shaking but couldn't leave Fire Cloud, evil god's palm. He suddenly said, Aren't you afraid that I have an ulterior motive for asking you to take away his remnant soul? Momo said casually, You have such a golden signboard. I don't think you'll ruin your own signboard. Besides, Dragon Tiger Mountain is just a small sect. It doesn't have long arms and can't manage so many things. We can only manage what we can. After all, people have limited power and time, but trivial things are endless. No wonder you could reach this step. Fire Cloud, evil god, nodded slowly. If I could meet you in the past, I would have come to challenge you directly. The past that the Fire Cloud, evil god was talking about was naturally the time when he was in his prime, the time when he slashed all the way from the east of Changbai Mountain to the south of the South Sea, the time when he used the world's Taoist demon race as a stepping stone on his path to invincibility. So scary. Momo smiled. Fortunately, I was born so many years later. I don't have to live in fear. Fire Cloud, evil god, shook his head and sighed. My two disciples aren't as good as you. I'm different. Momo shook his head. I just have more special experiences than others. I'm not as magical as you think. Opportunities are also part of the evolution of strength. Fire Cloud, evil god, said indifferently. Those who can stand here, who doesn't have unusual opportunities. Momo didn't want to talk more about this topic. He thought for a bit and knocked out 3 gray figures from the bag. Oh right, there are 3 more ghosts. I picked them up in the valley in the east a few days ago. They should be your people. Since I have the chance, I'll return them to you. Fire Cloud, evil god, looked at the 3 phantoms that had taken shape. When he saw what they looked like, he was stunned. This is Boss Fu. The 3 ghosts that Momo knocked out were none other than Boss Fu and the other 2 agents from the Shinjo administration who had gone to investigate and died, tragically, when Feral destroyed the drone that day. Yin Xiaoxi wanted to summon their souls back, but it was to no avail. I didn't expect them to be in your hands. I happened to pass by and saw them wandering in a valley. They were full of resentment. Momo said, I've converted some of them these days. I'll leave the rest to you. If you have any questions, ask them now. I'll send them away as soon as possible. After all, we're separated by life and death. They're all good agents. They've done a lot for Kelowna Authority. Fire Cloud, evil god, heaved a sigh, saying seriously, Momo, this old man owes you a favor. Momo just smiled casually. He didn't say yes or no. He lazily stretched and walked past. I'm sleepy. Let's find a place to sleep. Just like that, he slowly walked into the depths of the passage. After a while, Fire Cloud, Evil God, lowered his head to look at the talisman ball in his hand. But at this moment, a voice came from behind Fire Cloud, Evil God. It was Chi-Chi Kamaya's voice. Kelowna is full of talents, but this guy's the best in a younger generation. Perhaps only Lai Kai-shun can be compared with him. The reason for the old turtle's voice was that he was still holding a lunchbox and eating. Fire Cloud, Evil God, rolled his eyes, saying grumpily, "Did you throw away Gongsun Shiyu from Xianyuan Palace's Gongsun family?" The old turtle said, "How dare Gongsun Shiyu say he's from the younger generation? He's 800 or 900 years old. He's just a little old man, okay?" Fire Cloud, Evil God, raised the talisman ball in his hand. "What are you going to do?" "Leave it with me, for now." Actually, this talisman ball was quite cute. There was even a cute version of Gongsun Shiyu's head on it. "The sun is too bright up there. I just came down to find a shady place to eat." Chi-Chi Kamaya chuckled. "I didn't see or hear anything, Old turtle. Fire Cloud, Evil God, shook his head. "I'll take it for now. I'll return it to you when I'm done with it. Next time, I'll return it to you personally. This lunchbox tastes really good. Go, Lancelot. Challenge this Yin-Yang master." Yes, the moment the martial arts arena was repaired again, Mr. Gareth stood up and waved his hand while holding the hanger used for the intravenous drip. "Yes, go, Beast Lancelot." He actually thought so in his heart. Lancelot said today that she would let Gareth arrange the following matters. Now that Gareth gave the order, she naturally didn't say anything. Carrying the box with the ritual sword in her hand, she jumped directly into the center of the new martial arts platform. Regarding Mr. Gareth's actions, Farrell just looked on coldly. Anyway, Mr. Gareth acted as if he didn't see it. Farrell said indifferently, "The ritual sword can only be used in the territory of Britain. You're expecting too much." Mr. Gareth couldn't help but be stunned at this time. The ritual sword can be used? Isn't this thing just an item with a greater symbolic meaning? Farrell glanced at him indifferently and didn't say anything. Mr. Gareth couldn't help but frown. Although Farrell was crazy, there was some reason behind his madness. He wouldn't speak carelessly. So, the ritual sword really had some secrets that he didn't know? But no matter what, Lancelot still went up, representing the Ignite mechanism. She directly pointed the spearhead at the Japanese Yin-Yang master who had just fought a big battle. This female knight from the Ignite mechanism, although wearing a solemn and ancient deacon's equipment, was still very eye-catching. But now, she wanted to challenge the Yin-Yang master. She wanted to take advantage of the situation. She thought that the Yin-Yang master was actually weak after the big battle. She wanted to take advantage of the situation, but the challenge rule was that as long as one was challenged, one couldn't refuse. Under such rules, even if one was challenged dozens of times, as long as one still had the bead in one's hand, one could only brace himself and face the challenge. The Japanese transcendents criticized the Ignite mechanism for being shameless. It was no wonder that the transcendents in Europe didn't play around and so on. This guy, doesn't he know that Saimai just fought a big battle? He doesn't even have the spirit of a warrior. He is a knight. The handsome Yin-Yang master shook his head. Then he doesn't have the spirit of a knight at all. The Yin-Yang master shook his head and didn't say anything. At this moment, he slowly stood up. It was obvious that he didn't mind fighting again. But at this moment, a barefoot samurai suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed on the Yin-Yang master's shoulder. The barefoot samurai calmly said, "Let me fight this battle. You can rest." "Kaijiro?" The Yin-Yang master samurai was startled. After pondering for a moment, he finally nodded his head. The samurai's name was Kaijiro. His full name was Renshung Kaijiro. He was one of the members of the Japanese Transcendence representative team. He was the current generation member of the ancient Japanese swordsmanship sect, Woming Kamikaze sect. He was a swordsman with a mutated red ghost eye. When the ghost eye shined, he would transform into the most terrifying sword demon. Japan also had Taoist techniques, but they had evolved into Yin-Yang techniques. At the same time, there were also many monsters and legends. There were also martial artists, but most of the martial artists were samurai and swordsmen. They were simpler and more focused. Since Master Rensheng wants to fight, please bring him along. At this time, a masked man in black handed a long box to Kaijiro. Inside the box was an ancient sword. The ancient sword, the round mirror, and the Magatama were specially sent by the Japanese royal family to prepare for the conference. They were for the use of the entire team. But at this time, Kaijiro directly pushed the brocade box away and said calmly, "This celestial wolf is enough for me. I am not used to using other weapons." With that, Kaijiro Ninsheng jumped directly into the martial arts practice stage. He looked at Lancelot and said calmly, "If you want to challenge him, you can. But you have to defeat me first. Please." Lancelot directly put the box on the ground, but she didn't open it. She just chanted the elf's wrinkle and put on the knight's armor of inheritance. With a wave of her hand, a black knight's sword fell into her hand. This is a good sword. At this time, Kaijiro's eyes focused, and then he said in a low voice, "A demon sword." After saying that, he slowly pulled out a katana from his waist. This katana was like a piece of broken iron. It didn't even have a hilt. It was just wrapped with a worn yellow white cloth. This should be a duel of martial arts. There shouldn't be as many special effects as Taoist techniques, but when the two of them looked at each other, it made people unconsciously nervous. Can I sit here? The place where I came from doesn't seem to welcome me very much. Of course, there are many seats here. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Senior. After saying that, the young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain slowly sat down, next to Boss Luo and Miss Maid. It wasn't Boss Luo who asked him to find this place. Instead, it was this little celestial master from Dragon Tiger Mountain who came looking for him because he saw it. Chapter 2012. Looking at the time, it was already noon. From the beginning of the competition to the beginning, the competition, and now the challenge match. Time passed neither fast nor slow, but the people in front of the screen seemed to have forgotten the time. Unless it was necessary, they wouldn't leave the screen for even a second. They even forgot to eat. As a stinky young man, I'm not used to watching such a wonderful performance without eating something. Momo couldn't help sighing. Then he picked up the chopsticks and ate the food in the lunchbox. He wasn't afraid of greasy food, so he directly picked up a piece of fried chicken. The lunchbox was given by Boss Luo. He said one of his friends made too much, and it would be a waste if they couldn't finish it. Enjoying alone was better than enjoying together. Good things should be shared, so he gave a layer of lunchbox to Momo. On the martial arts stage, Lancelot and Kaijiro were still in the stage of testing each other. They did not have the intention to use their true strength. The current fighting style of these two people was slightly more conservative than the previous people who went on stage. Even so, in the eyes of those who didn't know about Supernatural, this duel was still wonderful. Tea, Mr. Momo. At this moment, Miss Maid slowly handed over a cup of tea. The young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain hurriedly put down the lunchbox and received it with both hands, blinking his eyes. The tea was poured from a pink thermos flask. Yes, it was the kind of thermos flask that was necessary for a picnic. This tea wasn't real tea. Momo even saw some wolfberries floating in the cup. Seniors, you're really in a good mood. He smiled casually. These two sat here like old cadres. Perhaps they just came to watch the duel. Watching the duel live was more wonderful than watching it through the screen. Otherwise, if this senior joined the duel, he would be a bully, and he wouldn't need to prove himself. Black 10 minutes. Momo was also dumbfounded at that time. Although he knew this senior was powerful, the appearance of Black 10 minutes made Momo realize that his previous conjectures about this senior were as ignorant as a frog in a well. Boss Luo said casually, "People need to eat well, and have strength. This is the most basic requirement." "Well, how did you find me?" "Senior, don't you know?" Momo asked. Boss Luo laughed. "I don't know everything. When you don't need to know, you don't have to know." Miss Maid added in her heart, but her face didn't show anything. "Senior knows." Momo shook his head and said, "When I used the demon seal to seal that young brother Yin Yang Master, the edict fell on the ground and spread out, creating waves similar to sonar. It's an additional method of investigation. There's nothing special about the other places, but the place where I'm sitting right now is slightly distorted. So, you guessed that I'm here. Boss Luo nodded. Momo said, I'm not guessing. I know only Senior can be here. Boss Luo chuckled and picked up a bobo sausage. After chewing and swallowing it, he said slowly, What's the matter? Momo took a deep breath. After we parted at Mount Tai, I wandered around the Kelowna continent looking for secrets, but I couldn't find a way to wake Jean Eyre up. I have a feeling that I won't get any result, even if I go down. I think I can only find you, Senior. Boss Luo said indifferently. The person you want to wake up will wake up soon. I don't need to do anything, and you don't need to do anything. Really? Momo's eyes brightened, saying with great joy, Senior, thank you for telling me. It's for a fee. Boss Luo smiled. Tell me your story during this time. It's my consultation fee. Momo was startled, but then he nodded slightly. He touched the hot tea in his hand and slowly took a sip. The moment the tea entered his mouth, he felt a sudden warm current in his body, quickly filling up his empty blue bar. Momo looked at Miss Maid, who served him tea with a trace of gratitude. He began to tell his story. The battle on the martial arts stage seemed to have disappeared from his sight. Instead, it was replaced by the place he had been to before. I went to Mount Chilian and stayed in the local herdsman's home. Momo's story was unfolding slowly. However, on the arena, Lancelot and Kayashiro had given up the conservative fighting style. In short, they were fighting for real. Even through the screen, ordinary people could feel the danger of the battle between the two, especially when Kayashiro's eyes turned red. Ordinary people couldn't judge the strength of the transcendence. They could only use the most direct way to judge the strength of the transcendence. But the transcendence on the stands could do that. They began to face the transcendence of this remote island for the first time. The yin-yang master in the previous battle was already very powerful, the kind of power that made many transcendents in small places feel despair. Even in the eyes of the transcendents, this overly beautiful yin-yang master had the power to threaten them. But it turned out that apart from the yin-yang master, there was also a swordsman called Ninsei Kayashiro. The red ghost eyes, the celestial wolf, that was broken but could release a terrifying light, and the Wumiyajiru swordsmanship. Lancelot was also remarkable. Although she was young, with the inheritance of the 12 knights, her strength was firmly at the forefront of the younger generation. But this wasn't too surprising. Or perhaps, for the transcendence, Lancelot's strength was reasonable. Although the knight mechanism didn't play with the churches and the Magician Association for a long time and even seemed to be on the decline, it was still a giant in the past. Even though it had gone downhill over the years, its foundation was still there. Therefore, even though Lancelot's performance was strong, it was reasonable. At this time, the two of them were still evenly matched. Ninsei Kayashiro, who had activated his red ghost eyes, the fierce look on his face gradually disappeared and was replaced by a carefree laughter. Awesome. Awesome. I haven't had such a great battle in 10 years. Ninsei Kayashiro suddenly raised the celestial wolf in his hand. This is the ultimate secret of my Wumiyaji. Please take it. As he spoke, a golden light shot up to the sky and turned into a huge yellow dragon. The yellow dragon fell down and bit Lancelot directly. On the martial arts stage, Lancelot raised the indestructible lake light in her hands and slashed towards the sky. The moment the enormous sword light touched the yellow dragon, it seemed to have a suppressive effect. The sword light and the yellow dragon were in a deadlock for a moment, and the sword light actually broke through the yellow dragon like a hot knife through butter. In the end, the yellow dragon was directly shattered. Finally, the sword light shot into the sky, directly splitting the clouds in the sky, and finally disappeared. The battle between the sword light and the yellow dragon was very extraordinary. Momo's story was interrupted because of this. He said, "It seems that Ms. Knight is going to win." The servant girl said indifferently, "That's a bit of a trick. The indestructible lake light has the property of breaking the dragon, which can restrain Ninsei Kayashiro's move. She's lucky." "She's just lucky?" Momo didn't completely agree. "You two are not from the same dimension as us, so there's no value in talking about it." He shook his head. Since he knew the result, there was no need to wait. He continued to tell his story. The scatter power didn't completely calm down for a long time. But at this moment, Ninsei Kayashiro had already put down the celestial wolf in his hand. His face was slightly pale as he said directly, "I lost. I'll challenge you again next year at this time." After saying this, the barefoot swordsman turned around and walked down the martial arts stage. He didn't show any dissatisfaction, nor did he curse Bakayaro. Instead, he silently returned to the Japanese supernatural team. Then he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes. Before Kelowna's Shinryu announced, a bead was shot out from the Yin-Yang Master's hand and finally landed in Lancelot's hand. The handsome Yin-Yang Master said indifferently, "We admit defeat for this round." But the Yin-Yang Master didn't intend to challenge again. Japan only had one bead left. This Yin-Yang Master didn't intend to challenge again. Perhaps it was because he had consumed too much energy in the last round and hadn't recovered yet. Then, after the female knight of the Night Mechanism left the stage, could he take the opportunity to challenge this Yin-Yang Master? The female knight Lancelot was also a good target. After all, she had already revealed her strength on the stage. No, he had to wait. There were too many supernatural experts here. If he revealed his strength too early, it wouldn't be beneficial to the number of beads he would get. The rules of the challenge were more favorable for the challengers who fought later. However, to everyone's surprise, this female knight from the Night Mechanism didn't intend to stop there. She continued to stay on the stage and pointed her demon sword at one of the 8 stands, the place where the Transcendent team that obtained a bead from the battle was at. It was at Mr. Garrett's behest that they were challenging an extraordinary team that was born in the ancient Ganges civilization and carried a hint of curry. Clearly, that team was a temporary splinter from India. In this extraordinary summit, India's supernatural experts didn't use cheats. Therefore, no matter if it was the report on the first day or the previous competition, it didn't attract too much attention. But this obviously wasn't Farrell's intention. Therefore, Mr. Gareth was actually panicking. But he only wanted to fight steadily. He didn't want to be stubborn and get into trouble with those powerful supernatural experts. Originally, Mr. Gareth felt that this conservative approach would definitely cause Farrell to be dissatisfied. But what Mr. Gareth didn't expect was that Farrell didn't flare up this time. He actually tacitly agreed and didn't say anything. Gareth could only feel uneasy. He heard Farrell say indifferently, "It's good to beat this Kshatriya." Mr. Gareth couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Did this crazy knight have some deep prejudice against this race that used cheats? But speaking of which, there was indeed a deep relationship between Britain and India. This race that lived beside the Ganges River was ruled by Britain for a long time. Britain's monarch even directly became the Emperor of India. At this moment, the few Kshatriya warriors who were challenged glared at each other. It was as if they had met an enemy. A warrior of the Kshatriya directly jumped onto the training platform and said, "Today, I will." Before he could finish, he really didn't finish. This Kshatriya warrior was actually knocked out of the arena by Lancelot's sword. He didn't see wrongly. It was really just one sword attack. Moreover, it didn't have many special effects. It was just a simple attack. After this simple attack, perhaps because she was also surprised, Lancelot was also at a loss. The magic sword in her hand hung in the air as if she didn't know where to put it. This is fake, right? Third brother, aren't you a race that uses cheats? The emotions of the audience in front of the screen were hard to describe. The Transcendents present couldn't help but frown. The Transcendents weren't shocked by the female knight's strength. They were shocked that this Kshatriya warrior was so *King weak. Could it be that this guy joined the team with money? At the same time, this match, Night Mechanism wins. Kelowna's Shinryu's slightly strange voice slowly sounded. Although this Kshatriya warrior wasn't much, his standard was still above average. Shinryu could see that the Kshatriya warrior's level was clearly seen through by Kelowna's Shinryu the moment he stepped onto the arena. That was why she found it strange. Even if he wasn't a match, he didn't know that he would be knocked out of the arena with a simple attack. Even acting wasn't that fake okay? Could it be that this Kshatriya team had already been secretly bribed by the Night Mechanism? It must be known that this Kshatriya team had obtained a pearl in the competition. In that situation, Without a certain level of ability, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. So this acting wasn't good? Losing just like that, it was too fake. Forget it. Kelowna's Shinryu shook his head. If his acting wasn't good, then so be it. At least it was better than going up on stage and doing an awkward dance. You've already won 2 matches in a row, Kelowna's Shinryu asked again. Do you still intend to continue challenging? Lancelot went up on stage as a challenger. Then, as long as she didn't step down, she was still a challenger. If they wanted to take the pearl from Lancelot, they could only wait for her to step down. I will continue to challenge. Lancelot quickly responded. She was using her own name to go up on stage. Anyway, Kelowna's Taoist sect had set a precedent, so there was nothing to say. So, as long as they had the ability to keep the pearl, it didn't matter how many people they split. They were welcome to challenge. And so, Lancelot chose another opponent who had only obtained a single pearl in the competition. However, what was inconceivable was that this time, Lancelot still sent her opponent flying out of the arena with a simple attack. A female knight from the knight mechanism, triple kill. Things seemed to be getting weirder and weirder. Could it be that this girl was the daughter of this world, as if she had the help of the gods? Hashtag PS1. Thank you, Boss Wudong, for giving Miss made a cute picture PS2, 0/1, PS3, as usual. Chapter 2013. Slap. A palm suddenly slapped his neck, and then there was one less mosquito in the world. The guy who killed the mosquito shifted his body and changed his posture. Soon, the sound of snoring came out again. He looked very indecent. Ugh. Eleanor, I can't eat anymore. Let me go. I really can't eat anymore. Ugh. There were even some strange, painful sounds coming from this guy's mask. In this power competition, there were actually people who didn't care about the competition at all. Instead, they were snoring from the beginning. I've had enough. These guys who call themselves the 3K. Speaking of which, who is Eleanor? If it weren't for the fact that the other masked guy was holding a notebook and pen in his hand, writing and drawing diligently, and seemed to have a decent attitude as he took notes, he would have long been unable to stand it and would have mocked and ridiculed them. This was a local racist trash organization in America. However, speaking of which, the Eagle Jam country that had the absolute advantage in terms of national strength didn't have any outstanding achievements in the field of transcendence. Other than a few masked guys, it seemed that only the Black Order was reported to the Eagle Jam country from its territory. However, the Black Order didn't originate from the Eagle Jam country. It was in the European continent. Because of the church's ruthless attitude, it had to follow the upsurge of immigration and quietly develop in the Eagle Jam country where transcendents were lacking. However, the nearby spectators who were affected by the sound of a sleeping guy killing a mosquito soon stopped caring. They were more concerned about the next challenge. The female knight of the knight mechanism won 3 out of 3 battles. The first battle was commendable, but the next 2 battles were too fake. However, now that Lancelot's beads were full, she automatically lost the qualification to be a challenger and could only be challenged. From the strength displayed by Lancelot, she was far less terrifying than the 100 Calamity Priest and the Japanese Onmyoji. The strength of this female knight was an acceptable strength, a strength that could be defeated. However, Lancelot's 3 victories gave another idea to the transcendents present who had the strength, but missed the beads due to various reasons. Instead of waiting blindly, why not take the initiative to attack and eliminate those who had no ability in the first place? Some people managed to snatch the pearl during the competition. Most of them were willing to do so because of the golden light wall released by Kelowna and Shinryu. Once that thing was released, it was impossible to enter the arena again. However, there were always some people who were lucky enough to pick up the pearl and leave immediately, thinking that they had gotten a good deal for nothing. Perhaps the female knights next to opponents were really weak, so she was able to fight evenly. Just like the human countries, there were very developed and powerful countries all over the world. But at the same time, there were also poor countries where the people were still suffering from hunger and the entire national treasury couldn't even gather the money for a supercar. Even transcendents had barren lands. Even the revival of Qi half a year ago could hardly change those places that had been barren since ancient times. Because of that barren nature, extraordinary powers were like seeds that could hardly germinate in those places and were still in the budding stage even now. Their minds instantly became active, and in the following time, they put their ideas into practice. When Lancelot waited for a moment and no one came up to challenge her, she returned to Mr. Gareth with the 3 pearls. A magician from the Northern European diplomatic mission directly came up to the arena. He picked a soft persimmon. Mr. Gareth didn't care about this at this time. In this conference, his goal for himself was to at least keep 1 pearl. Anyway, the queen didn't give him a death order to do what he had to do. He couldn't do it. If Farrell was excluded, the knight mechanism itself had a fatal shortcoming of lacking high-end combat power. This time, Lancelot was able to bring back 3 pearls, which was indeed a big surprise for Gareth. "Lancelot, you are my pride." He was not stingy with his praise. "After returning to China, I will use all my connections to find a suitable boyfriend for you." The silent female knight just glanced at Mr. Gareth expressionlessly and immediately sat down. At this time, Mr. Gareth also pulled out the drip needle and slowly stood up. "I'm going to warm up." Like many transcendents who chose to directly pick the soft persimmon fruit at this time, Mr. Gareth also planned to do so. He didn't intend to participate in the high-level battle, so he might as well try to maximize the results of the knight mechanism on the low-level battlefield. "So, Mr. Farrell, I'm going up." "Where is Farrell?" At this time, Mr. Gareth discovered one thing. He didn't know when Farrell had started to disappear again. The competition was in full swing, but it ushered in a competition schedule that couldn't be said to be unexciting, but it gave people a feeling that something was missing. The various transcendent teams at this time had hundreds of tricks up their sleeves. Some were strange, some were ferocious, and they were indeed amazing. But they still felt that something was missing. Well, there was no aura that could easily shatter the sky and the earth between the strong. But even so, the bead that Fire Cloud, evil god, took out gradually began to gather at this time. The bead slowly flowed into the list of the Security Council that was originally drawn up by the summit meeting. Moreover, for the time being, no Wild Strong appeared to break the list that was originally drawn up. Somewhere in the stands, Mr. Che Tian, who was holding a pen and taking notes, slowly wrote some of his own opinions at the end of a page. This challenge was indeed a competition used to block all voices against the existence of the Security Council. In the end, at the end of this competition, it would evolve into a competition for the right to speak on the Security Council's list. After slowly writing this line of words, Mr. Che Tian thought again and then wrote another line of words. According to the evaluation standards of the Secret Society, Subworld Number 3, half a year after the Spirit Chi explosion, can temporarily be evaluated as a 4-star transcendent civilization. In addition, it has the potential to become a 5-star civilization. The tip of Mr. Che Tian's pen paused on the word potential and lightly tapped a few times. After a moment of silence, he suddenly erased that line. He flipped to a new page, and this page started recording the schedule of the Challenger League. During this period, the Tear of God suddenly began to explode. Just as the transcendents who possessed the Tear of God feared, the secret medicine that was clearly heaven-defying was ultimately reduced to a common item that everyone had a bottle of. They gritted their teeth and swallowed the Tear of God, or else they would not have been able to defeat their opponents. At present, the challengers and the challenged appeared one after another, as if they were looking at flowers on horseback. But when he saw those who were 2 or 3 levels lower suddenly having their strength increase one after another, Fire Cloud, evil god, could not help but frown. He even suspected that this was some sort of scheme. Otherwise, why would so many transcendent organizations have that mysterious medicine that could increase a person's strength? It would make sense if only 1 or 2 people had it, who did not have a trump card. But with everyone having one, could it be that this thing could be sold in bulk? But what about the purchasing channels? And according to Fire Cloud, evil god's observations, he clearly found that those who had their strength increase did not seem to be affected at all when their strength regressed to its original level. No matter if it was spirit, chi, or spirit, there was no loss. At this moment, he understood that Nangong Do and Taoist solitary clouds feigning was not because of the secret medicine. But why did this secret medicine only appear in these transcendent organizations that were 2 or 3 levels lower? He secretly asked Baijia, Chichi Kamaya, and even discussed with the leaders of the 4 spiritual clans. They did not know about the existence of this secret medicine. It feels like there's an invisible hand that's quietly pulling the strings of this competition. At this time, Fire Cloud, Evil God's brows were knitted together as he muttered to himself, Master Long, what do you think of this matter? He subconsciously looked over, only to see Kelowna's Shinryu lowering his head and sending a message on his phone, as if he did not hear what Fire Cloud Evil God said just now. Lord Long? Ah, what did you say? Kelowna's Shinryu turned around. What do you mean, what do I think? It's nothing. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head and then glanced at the screen of Shinryu's phone. It was actually an anti-peeping screen. Old man, what are you looking at? Kelowna's Shinryu raised his voice, as if someone had stepped on his tail. Nothing. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head again and thought for a moment. Lord Long, it looks like this competition is about to enter the 3rd stage. Those who are really strong should be going up soon. I hope you can be more tolerant of the ordinary people present. Don't bother me if there's nothing, Long Shiraw said impatiently. Fire Cloud Evil God smiled bitterly. He knew that Kelowna's Shinryu would not leave them alone. Even if the woman who claimed to be Shinryu's godmother was not in the stands of the media area, with Long Shiraw's temperament, he would never leave the ordinary people alone. Huh? At this moment, Fire Cloud Evil God could not help but exclaim in surprise. There were very few things in this world that could surprise Fire Cloud Evil God. At this moment, Kelowna's Shinryu, who was sending a message, could not help but look up. In a flash, she saw what surprised Fire Cloud Evil God. It was a woman with a mask on her face and, at the same time, wearing a white training suit. Huh? Kelowna's Shinryu could not help but exclaim in surprise at this time. Fire Cloud Evil God's face turned serious. Lord Long, did you see something? Yes. Kelowna's Shinryu nodded at this time, and then said very seriously and with a bit of jealousy, This woman and you are wearing the same couple's outfit? How could an old man like you find a girlfriend? It's not fair. What the hell is in your head, you old man? Even if you're an old virgin for thousands of years, you are still a Kelowna's Shinryu. Don't act like a resentful woman, okay? Cough, cough, cough. I don't know this girl. Fire Cloud Evil God could not help but cough a few times and quickly said, What I mean is this girl is not simple. I'm afraid she is not a simple warrior. But among the famous and talented warriors of Kelowna, I can't remember any information about this girl. In the divine great land, the Xinyuan Palace was basically the only martial artist left. Apart from the Xinyuan Palace, the gap in martial artists was much more severe than the Dao sect during the revival of Qi. The Fire Cloud Evil God was an anomaly. He was wild, and the wild kind at that. But there was only one Fire Cloud Evil God in Kelowna, so Xinyuan Palace was still the holy land of warriors. But Xinyuan Palace's martial arts inheritance had never been passed down to outsiders. This woman, Kelowna's Shinryu could not help but seriously look at the masked woman in white exercise clothes on the stage. Could it be? Could it be? Fire Cloud Evil God quietly stretched his neck a little. Kelowna's Shinryu said seriously, Is she really not your girlfriend? Lord Long, don't be ridiculous. Kelowna's Shinryu shook his head at this time and said suddenly, She should be a dead person, but she is still here. Maybe there is something on her that saved her life. What's this woman's name? Fire Cloud Evil God waved his hand and grabbed a piece of information. After glancing at it, he frowned and said, Only her name, no surname. Chuyong. Chuyong? Kelowna's Shinryu was stunned subconsciously. She suddenly remembered the question Mo Xiaofei asked her when she came out from the hotel where young Master Tantalizing Wolf stayed. Master, do you know Chuyong? Was little Fei referring to this? Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't help but ponder at this time. Yes, Chuyong. Fire Cloud, evil god nodded. She represents the Tao Sect Association, not the various Tao sects, but directly under the name of the Tao Sect Association. A mysterious warrior actually uses the name of the Tao Sect Association. While they were talking, the masked woman in white exercise clothes went up the stage and directly attacked a burly boxer who looked like a giant bear. The boxer was over 2 meters tall, with distinct muscles all over his body. It was as if his body had been polished into a steel giant. He came from the highlands of Siberia, where he was from a mysterious and extremely famous devil training camp. However, facing such a strong opponent, the masked woman in white exercise clothes, who was less than 1/3 of the opponent's body, was as weak as a child. However, to everyone's surprise, the masked woman also threw out a punch when facing this terrifying opponent's iron fist. Bang! Loud sound. The sound was so loud, like a sonic boom. The airwaves rolled, and the simple pressure of the fist turned into a strong wind, even blowing to the 8 grandstands. The boxer from the devil training camp directly broke his arm under the punch of the masked woman, and his body flew out, smashing into the guardrail of the grandstand. Finally, he rolled his eyes and fainted. This is... Fire Cloud, evil god, was stunned. What fist art? Emperor's martial arts. Chichi Kamaya put down the teacup in his hand, frowned, and muttered to himself, "Who is this girl? Chuyang. I seem to have heard this name somewhere." Chuyang. 100 Calamity Taoist opened his eyes at this time, as if he was immersed in some memories. Emperor's shocking fist. On the grandstand, Mr. Song's eyes suddenly narrowed. Only the first emperor could learn this martial art. How could it appear on this woman? Gong Fanqing, where are you? I'm here. Go and meet this mysterious woman. Hashtag PS 1/1. Chapter 2014. That woman. On the stand, Mo Xiaofei had a strange and inexplicable feeling in his heart since the masked woman Chuyang came to the stage. An inexplicable sense of closeness made Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but take a few more glances at Chuyang. In fact, this strange feeling had already existed when Mo Xiaofei met Chuyang for the first time at Song Dynasty Hotel. In fact, he could see through the mask on Chuyang's face. The ability to see through was just a piece of cake for Mo Xiaofei at this stage. But he didn't do so. He was a person with righteousness and belief, so he would resist this kind of evil thoughts from the bottom of his heart. "Brother, do you know this woman?" Zhuai Feng asked suddenly. "I met her once." Mo Xiaofei thought for a while. "She's from Taoism." "I think so. I'm not sure, and I'm not familiar with her. I just feel like I know her. I can't explain this feeling for the time being." Zhuai Feng's face was full of question marks. But Zhuai Feng chose not to ask at this time, because he found one thing, that was, he had seen the punch of this woman named Chuyang. Or, he had seen something similar. When he was on Mount Tai, his elder brother was possessed by a ghost and became different. At that time, his elder brother had made a similar punch. Moreover, at that time, his big brother had also taught him this fist technique. Now, Windchaser also knew this fist technique. When he was receiving the inheritance of the greedy wolf in the Highland Temple, he would practice this fist technique from time to time, but he could not grasp the key points. He could also make this punch with great power. However, the problem was that even though the power was great, there was no way to display the kind of power that Mo Xiaofei had displayed back then, where he could dominate the world. But Zhuai Feng once again experienced this feeling from this mysterious woman named Chuyang. Was this woman related to the ghost that possessed his elder brother? No, he couldn't let his elder brother be possessed by the ghost. Zhuai Feng had always been the type of person who would do whatever he thought of. Although he had grown up a lot during this time, his temperament was still as young as before. He stood up directly after making a ruckus. "Star Monarch, what are you going to do?" Seeing this, Purple Star quickly asked. Zhuai Feng said, "We don't have a single bead now. The beads given by Fire Cloud, evil god at the beginning, weren't ours either. I'm going down to get a bead." At this time, Chuyang was still on the stage. She was fighting in the name of the Tao Sect Association. At this time, there were only 3 beads under the name of Tao Sect Association. Shuyang automatically became the party to be challenged. It's rare for Lord Tai Bai Jinxing to have such ambition. It's really the fortune of our race. But Purple Star nodded solemnly at this time, and then said, "This is the Tao Sect Association's bead. If we directly snatch it from the hands of the Tao Sect Association, it will deepen the conflict between the Taoists and demons in Kelowna. It's really unwise. We should target the transcendent teams outside of Kelowna. Now that the transcendent world has arrived, the Taoists and demons in Kelowna should unite against the external forces." This, Zhuifeng frowned directly. Okay, I was too impulsive. Although the young man's temperament was still a little heavy, he was not ignorant of the overall situation. Purple Star's words made him speechless, and he could only give up resentfully. In fact, the Taoists and demons in Kelowna had been deliberately avoiding direct battles. Even after Lancelot won 3 battles and entered the challenge situation, they had been silently adhering to this rule. Now, in addition to the Demon Race Alliance being given a bead at the beginning, the 4 spirit clans had also obtained 1 or 2 beads in the subsequent battles and challenges. If these beads were regarded as the gold medals of a certain world sports event, the number of gold medals in Kelowna was already far ahead. Someone is going to challenge her. It's also a woman. Mo Xiaofei suddenly interrupted Zhuifeng and Purple Star's conversation at this time. On the martial arts stage, a beautiful woman in casual clothes slowly walked up the stage with a charming smile on her face at this time. "I'm Gong Fanqing from the Inata sect. Please enlighten me," the charming woman on the stage said with a light smile. Gong Fanqing? When Chi-Chi Kamaya heard this name, he was stunned at first. Then he frowned and subconsciously looked at Ghost Baby beside him. Is it the demoness who harmed the Central Plains 500 years ago? Gong Fanqing. I haven't fought with her, so I don't know. Ghost Baby shook his head. Chi-Chi Kamaya frowned and didn't say anything. If it was really the demoness 500 years ago, then it was related to a secret of the Xinyuan Palace. In fact, the Gongsun clan of the Qian tribe of the Xinyuan Palace had not only one genius, Gongsun Shiyu. In Gongsun Shiyu's era, there was also another talented Gongsun clan disciple. That person was called Gongsun Wu. Gongsun Wu was not much worse than Gongsun Shiyu, but he had never been recognized by the Gongsun clan. First, Gongsun Wu almost cultivated the devil arts. Second, Emperor Xuanyuan's atavistic bloodline only appeared in Gongsun Shiyu. In the palace, except for the legitimate princess, Gongsun Shiyu was the only one who could touch the sword chi of Xianyuan of the 9 provinces. Naturally, he was regarded as the treasure of the Gongsun clan. It wasn't that the Gongsun clan didn't value Gongsun Wu, but as the saying went, a mountain couldn't accommodate 2 tigers. Gongsun Wu was a proud man, so he always felt inferior when facing Gongsun Shiyu, who was equally outstanding or even more outstanding than him. Later, Gongsun Wu suddenly betrayed the Xinyuan Palace one day, and soon after, the news that Gongsun Wu was with the demoness came out. The Xinyuan Palace sent many Golden Sword warriors to capture Gongsun Wu, but after a while, Gongsun Wu and the demoness Gong Fanqing both disappeared. It was said that before they disappeared, something happened between them and a sword immortal, and that sword immortal also mysteriously disappeared after that. In the past hundreds of years, the Xinyuan Palace didn't give up searching, but there was still no news. Tai Bai of Kelowna, Green Lotus, sword immortal. I haven't seen this person for a long time. Chi-Chi Kamaya suddenly sighed and said, "It's a pity that such a talented hero disappeared." On the martial arts stage, the mysterious woman Chuyang was looking at Gong Fanqing on the stage. They didn't start fighting immediately. They had been staring at each other for more than a minute. Firecloud, evil god, didn't belong to that era, so he didn't know Gong Fanqing. He just occasionally chatted with those old guys and heard about some legends of the ancient masters of Kelowna. In fact, Firecloud, evil god, was born in the Age of Turmoil at the end of the Ming Dynasty. He lived through the whole Qing Dynasty and then came to the current Xian country. Calculating the time, Firecloud, evil god, was only about 300 years old. In the cultivation world, people who were about 300 years old could only be regarded as middle-aged, and they were still young. Therefore, the Xinyuan Palace thought that Firecloud Evil God was a wild and barbaric guy, which was completely illogical. Gong Fanqing, where have I heard this name before? Even though he couldn't recall at the moment, Gong Fanqing's extraordinary cultivation was like an incandescent lamp in the night in the eyes of Firecloud Evil God, who was also a martial artist. Moreover, it was the kind of light bulb that could break 10,000 watts. Good. Firecloud Evil God suddenly slapped his thigh. I didn't expect that other than the Xinyuan Palace, Kelowna would have two such outstanding martial artists. And they are both female martial artists. Kelowna's martial artists are finally going to raise their heads. Stop fooling around. Shinryu of Kelowna suddenly said, let's not talk about how Chuyang is under the name of the Tao Association. Didn't you hear what Gong Fanqing said? True Tao. That's Tai Bai's orthodoxy, and it's still under the name of the Tao Association. Firecloud Evil God was currently immersed in the passion of Kelowna's martial artists, who were constantly striving to improve themselves, passing down the torch, and had the hope of rising up. How could he listen to that? He immediately snorted. So what if it's Tai Bai's orthodoxy? It said that the green lotusaur deity also entered the path of martial arts. Strictly speaking, he was first a swordsman, then a sword deity. His descendants are naturally considered to be part of the martial arts lineage. After rounding up, am I still your ancestor? Long Shiraw sneered disdainfully. Strictly speaking, you are indeed the ancestor of all of us. Firecloud Evil God said in a serious tone. You mother asterisk her. Shinryu of Kelowna cursed. As for Gong Fanqing, who was on the stage, Long Shiraw didn't pay much attention to her after a few glances. She had actually heard of this name before. She was the female devil who had once harmed the martial arts world of Kelowna hundreds of years ago. However, Gong Fanqing and Gong Sunhua had done evil together, and the Xinyuan Palace had already sent out the Golden Sword Warrior, so she was too lazy to do anything. The ancient Kelowna was much more troublesome than the modern one. There were too many demons, ghosts, and unruly people. She was busy putting out fires everywhere. But is it really this female devil? Shinryu of Kelowna couldn't help but murmur. On the stage, Gong Fanqing had been staring at each other for a long time, but she still couldn't find any flaws in the masked woman, Chuyang. She couldn't help but marvel at her opponent's brilliance. At this time, Chuyang said with a trace of relief, finally, the martial arts road of Kelowna is not interrupted. Among the young warriors, you are very good. Little girl, don't be afraid of biting your tongue. Gong Fanqing only felt a little funny. She knew what era she was from. But even in her era, no one dared to talk to her in such a tone. It seemed that the name of the female devil of Kelowna had been forgotten for too long. Gong Fanqing didn't blame anyone. After all, she and Gong Sunhua were trapped in the Penglai treasure house back then. In the past hundreds of years, the world of Kelowna had changed. I didn't intend to experience the Tao, demon, and martial Tao of the divine land so soon, Chuyang said at this time. However, since you are on the stage, show me your moves. Let me see the development of the martial arts of Kelowna. Then I'll show you the real, ancient martial arts. Gong Fanqing chuckled. Her figure flashed in an instant, directly grabbing the veil on Chuyang's face. She was qualified to say that. The martial arts road of Kelowna was quite declining. Only a little was left. Firecloud, Evil God, wanted to pick it up these years, but one person couldn't save the whole martial arts world. There are not many people who were willing to practice martial arts. And those who were willing to practice martial arts either missed the golden period or couldn't reach a high level because of the serious pollution of their bodies. Compare with the modern martial arts. The martial arts of hundreds of years ago could be regarded as ancient martial arts. Gong Fanqing's own martial arts skills were inherited from an even more ancient era. In a split second, Gong Fanqing's palm turned into thousands of shadows in front of Chuyang. However, these countless shadows were unable to touch the corner of Chuyang's clothes. Gong Fanqing couldn't help but be surprised. Although she didn't use her full strength, this move of the flowing cloud scattering hands could be said to be the peak of martial arts in her era. It was not easy to dodge. Your palm technique is not bad, Chu Yang said slowly in an affirmative tone as she dodged easily. Your basic skills are also not bad. The timing and angle of your move are not bad. It's a pity that your mentality is not right. What? Gong Fanqing was stunned. While she was stunned, Chu Yang gently pushed out a palm. In a split second, this palm gave Gong Fanqing a feeling of covering the sky and earth. The palm enlarged infinitely like a huge wall. She actually had a feeling that she couldn't dodge it. Under the stimulation of instinct, Gong Fanqing instantly retracted her flowing cloud, scattering hands. She took 3 steps back and finally stopped when she reached the edge of the martial arts stage. Chiang's palm did not completely push out in the end. She naturally stopped. She could retract and withdraw her palm at will. Gong Fanqing couldn't help but be silent. Her eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. She frowned and said, "You said that my mentality is not right. Where is it wrong?" Chu Yang said indifferently, "Don't look down on the people of the world. Even if you don't know who your opponent is, you still have to treat them as equals. I'm not like what you think. I'm just a proud and arrogant girl. If you don't take back your contempt, you will suffer." Gong Fanqing's frown deepened. She quietly glanced at the grandstand beside her. Her gaze directly fell on Mr. Song, but she only saw Mr. Song lightly nodding his head at this time. Gong Fanqing slowly exhaled. After adjusting her breath, she brazenly struck out her palm again. This palm contained the power of the 28 constellations of the 4 divisions. It was as if it was formed by nature. When the palm struck out, it gave people a feeling that there was no way to retreat and no way to avoid it. On the grandstand, Fire Cloud, Evil God, directly praised good palm technique. At this time, Chu Yang was motionless. When the countless palm strikes were about to hit her body, Chu Yang's figure flashed. But when her figure reappeared in front of everyone's eyes, it was a simple posture of a horse stance and a fist strike. The palm strikes of the 28 constellations of the 4 divisions disappeared. Only a gust of wind blew, slowly sweeping across everyone's faces. At this time, Gong Fanqing's face was pale. She covered her shoulder and then vomited a mouthful of blood. "What's this fist technique?" She vomited another mouthful of blood. Chu Yang slowly withdrew her fist. Basic fist technique. Gong Fanqing opened her mouth, seemingly wanting to say something, but she didn't know what to say in the end. "Didn't you just say not to look down on people in the world? What the F***CK is this double standard dog? Wugo Mountain is a good place. Oh, this fist is so powerful." Momo couldn't help praising at this moment, but the senior didn't seem to hear it. Boss Luo was now looking at the Li grandstand diagonally ahead. Momo subconsciously followed the senior's gaze, but didn't see anything special. He couldn't help but feel confused. "Senior, what's the matter? Ask if you don't understand." "Nothing," Boss Luo said casually. "Just one more spectator." "Spectator?" Momo couldn't help being stunned. He looked at the Li grandstand again, but still didn't find anything special. If there was anything special, it was probably a guy who was slowly walking to the higher part of the grandstand. It seemed to be a very ordinary man. His hair was casually tied up, wearing a white shirt, round glasses, and white gloves. This chapter ends.